בחרמון נמס השלג בחצי הלילה, בחרמון זורם לו פלג בחצי הליל. אבא שם על הר השלג בחצי הלילה, שר שירים על נס בפלא עם כל ישראל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. בבקעת תמר פורח בחצי הלילה, הירח שם זורח בחצי הליל. שם אחי ודאי שומע בחצי הלילה את שירנו השמח כאן בישראל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. במדבר הולך החושך בחצי הלילה, שקט הס בארץ גושן בחצי הליל. לדודי עיני נחושת בחצי הלילה, וגם הוא חוגג כמו שכל בית ישראל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. ואני יושב בבית בחצי הלילה, עם נרות וגביע יין בחצי הליל, וכוכב מאיר עיניים בחצי הלילה, לי מוסר ברכת שמיים ולכל ישראל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. שוב צוהל.
Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння, різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар.
Future sun.
Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 997 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And today we have very big news. Russia's begun purging their top military commanders for lying, of all things. And also, we're hearing of a major uprising still taking place in Russian-occupied Georgia in Abkhazia, and it is escalating even right now. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as we've been getting major news today from inside of Russian command that major arrests have been occurring inside of one of the largest structures of Russian fighting units inside of Ukraine. In the area around Donetsk right now stands the Russian 3rd Combined Arms Army, one of the combined arms armies inside of Ukraine, one of the several, but still the largest fighting element of the Russian army. Reports have come out today that the Russian FSB is now arresting top officials of the 3rd Combined Arms Army inside of Ukraine itself, as it appears that Putin has now declared a brand new purge that is going to be directly affecting the 3rd Combined Arms Army in the middle of their major offensives at Toretsk, at Chasiv Yar, and also at Pokrovsk as well. A very unfortunate moment, but once again showing that there may be some very serious loyalty issues at the moment in the Russian Federation's armed forces, and not only that, it seems as though they may be reaching a fever pitch to the point that the Russians are having to actually send down the FSB to arrest these top military officials and bring them, quote-unquote, to justice, according to the Russians.
Man, how dare they lie, man? How dare those Russians lie about taking settlements? It's not like we haven't known that for quite some time. I guess they just realize that Putin is asking some questions that's leading to some unsavory answers, and now the little guys are going to pay the price.
And I gotta tell you, it really does look like the little guys are going to be paying the price. But while the little guys might be paying a price right now in the 3rd Russian Combined Arms Army, we are hearing that the big guys are paying the price currently inside of West Abkhazia. As we were covering yesterday, an uprising that began in this area, and today the uprising has continued in full-fledged form. According to Russian officials at the moment, the president of West Abkhazia, largely installed by the Russian Federation, has had to flee the capital city of the puppet state and is currently in an unknown location inside of West Abkhazia, and at the moment there are even rumors that he has fled all the way out of West Abkhazia and into Sochi inside the Russian Federation, although that news and information has not been corroborated at the moment, and we are still trying to get some details or at least idea of the whereabouts of the president of West Abkhazia. The uprising, or the mob as we have been calling it, considering that it is very violent and very angry at this moment towards the government of Abkhazia, is still largely in control of the situation. We have not seen any Russian armed forces moving into the area at the moment, and it appears that Abkhazian security forces have been completely overwhelmed and are on the back foot, largely at the mercy of the mob and whatever their wishes may be inside the capital city of West Abkhazia called Sukhumi, which is right along the coastline. Meanwhile, we've been able to hear that while this major uprising is occurring within the Russian puppet state of West Abkhazia, there have been major actions ongoing in the ground right now inside of Israel, as a shocking bit of news came out today that Netanyahu's house was once again attacked by Hezbollah forces today. It appears that they threw some flares at the house or something along those lines. It didn't look like a rocket attack, but still, it is the second time that Netanyahu's residence has been attacked in some form during the entirety of the proxy conflict from its starting point, at least on this channel, on October 7th of 2023. Meanwhile, inside of southern Lebanon, we were also able to see the chief of the general staff of the Israeli armed forces arriving in the area today and actually touring the areas of control that the Israelis are currently holding right now within southern Lebanon, just a few miles away from China, where major battles continue to rage for the Heights Delta control, largely the fate of southern Lebanon and the Hezbollah and IRGC forces that are desperately trying to hold on to any control of the heights that they have at this moment. Meanwhile, down inside of southern Israel and in the Gaza Strip, we have also been able to see that IDF operations are, interesting enough, still continuing inside of Han Yunis against the Hezbollah forces there, and it does appear that, well, actually the Hamas forces there, and it does appear that while Hamas has largely been defeated, there is still some resistance coming from the areas around Nusayrat camp and Han Yunis itself, while the Israeli Defense Forces largely did deal with the uprisings inside of Gaza and Rafah within the Gaza Strip. Moving on from the Middle East, however, and back up into Ukraine, we have been able to see that major combat actions have been occurring today in the Kursk Oblast, one of many days, pretty much sequential days, where the Russians have been putting as much effort and as much pressure as possible onto the Ukrainian defenses and hoping that eventually they'll crack. It appears the Ukrainian defenses are not cracking in this area at the moment. It actually appears that the Russian offensive efforts are beginning to crack under the strain of continually high losses on a day-to-day basis, and it seems as though this front is once again seeing absolutely no changes, with the Russians understanding that there is a ticking clock on this front line, because if they are not able to push the Ukrainians out in time, it largely spells doom for them if they even get into the negotiations that are possibly rumored at this point on in the future. We have also been able to hear of the heavy fighting that is actually happening around the area of Seversky and the Severonsky Forest as the Russians continue to try and conduct a breakthrough in the Ukrainian lines towards Slovyansk, and we've also been able to see that heavy Ukrainian defensive action has been occurring around the areas of Chasiv Yar, Toretsk, and Pokrovsk, largely stopping the Russian Federation from making any ground, and we expect that that will certainly be the case as the entire 3rd Combined Arms Army's command structure has practically been purged after the events of today. But we have an absolutely major bit of news to cover tonight, and we also have been able to hear, in a side note, that the United States government and the office of the president is currently considering more sanctions to be applied against the Russian Federation here within the very near future. Once again, attempting to ramp up the pressure against the Russian Federation and see if they can possibly start to move the Russian economy a little bit quicker into its financial collapse, which we're still seeing at the moment. But there is loads of news today. There's actually quite a high amount, and we are going to be moving into probably the most shocking news of the day. It is another major purge of the Russian armed forces. We have seen in the past that there have been a considerable amount of purges that have happened, especially since the Yevgeny Prigozhin coup of the summer of 2023, which was, of course, a major ordeal. It was the first time that we had ever seen any part of the Russian Federation's fighting forces directly turn against the Russian government, and not only that, show how weak the Russian Federation's armed forces and central government was when directly challenged by a group like Wagner. For this reason, since then, we have seen that a great deal of Russian generals, and not only that, Russian commanders have been arrested or completely offed by the Russian government as a result of the questionability of their loyalty brought about because of the Wagner coup. We did see that some very famous names like Gerasimov and Surovikin have pretty much faded into obscurity and largely don't even exist anymore. Surovikin is actually serving in a prison right now inside of Moscow for alleged corruption. We then saw that the general of the 6th Combined Arms Army, which is down in the area around Robotny, actually made a very scathing statement against Putin. And a couple of months had passed, and then interestingly enough, Ivan Popov, who was the general of the 6th Combined Arms Army inside of southern Ukraine, along with other top officials of the 6th Combined Arms Army, were all purged simultaneously, and Ivan Popov is now serving a prison sentence as well of multiple years due to alleged corruption issues inside of the 6th Combined Arms Army, although it was directly because of the scathing statements that Ivan Popov had made against Vladimir Putin and the Russian central government. It appears that finally the axe has fallen on the 6th Combined Arms Army, which is currently in the Donetsk area at the moment. We do not really know what's brought about the purges of today, but we were able to hear, and I want to make sure that we get this out there correctly, so let me make sure to read all of the information that we have. Rybar and other Russian mill bloggers report that several Russian commanders have been dismissed and arrested for falsifying reports. The Army commander, the Chief of Staff of the 3rd Army, and the Brigade commander of the 7th Brigade of the 3rd Army have allegedly been arrested, while battalion commanders have been removed. Inspections are also underway in the 6th and 123rd Brigades in the same sector. The 7th, 6th, and 123rd Brigades, just to clarify, are all a part of the 3rd Army. They are smaller units within the 3rd Army. The events pertain to the Seversk direction in the Donetsk region. These commanders allegedly lied about capturing settlements such as Serebryanka, Hihorivka, and Bilorivka, as well as Verkno-Kamyansky. For several months, they reported the capture of these locations, which was apparently entirely false. The truth came to light only when senior officers arrived to inspect Bilorivka, which was supposed to be in the rear. Meanwhile, correspondents visited positions, and everything was meticulously documented on paper. As Russians themselves lament, the commanders didn't care about the fate of their soldiers. Their main goal wasn't to defeat the enemy, but to report progress. Largely the same kind of scandals that arrived with the kill count metric that was used by the United States in Vietnam. Russia is also trying to measure this war in a different metric, which is the amount of land gained, considering that this is a conventional war and not an asymmetrical one. And for this reason, it appears that many Russian commanders, pretty much to the very height of the 3rd Army, have been involved in lying and falsifying these reports, so that way the axe didn't come down on them even quicker and they were purged, because the Russian government believed that their loyalty was questionable and they were not persecuting the objectives of the Russian army as best as they possibly could have. And so for this reason, at least according to the public statements being made by the mill bloggers that have been hearing about these arrests today inside of Russia, it seems that the arrests are being made because these officers at every single level, from the army to the brigade and apparently even into some battalion levels, have been falsifying these reports the entire time.
I wonder why they'd be incentivized to actually falsify the reports, because it's not like Putin would, take his anger out on these commanders if they didn't make any progress. And honestly, like, I'm being sarcastic there, obviously, the commanders need to make progress, because if they don't, Putin is going to come down there and probably punish them severely for not making progress. It's not like any other military where if you don't make progress, they simply come up with a new plan, they start again. With Putin, it's get it done, I don't care how it gets done, or else. And I think that's why the commanders are lying here about taking settlements. It's probably a mixture of incompetence and also fear of Putin at the same time, or at least in my opinion.
It probably is a mix of both. I would actually say it's probably more so fear, and also a combination of a bit of ego and wanting to say that they're doing far better than they really are, although the offensives in the Seversk direction are doing incredibly poorly. Now, I do want to remind everyone that the Third Army largely is in control of the entire front line from the area around Seversk and all the way down to Bakhmut and Pokrovsk itself, from what we understand, and then the Sixth Army largely takes over from Volodar and goes all the way over to Kamyansk. Sadly, I don't know the specific army that is in control of the area around the Dnipro River at the moment, but the 6th Army and the 3rd Army are really the main ones that are fighting Ukraine at the moment. And the interesting thing about this is that they have lied about taking certain towns, such as Belorivka. I'll actually show you all the towns that they lied and falsified the reports about taking. And so let me move down here really quickly and show you. So first off, we have the town of Belorivka. This is a fairly larger settlement. You can actually see here in the satellite picture from Google Earth that it had already been a significant battlefield for quite some time by the time the satellite came around. But you can see the artillery pot marks and scars made into the white chalk earth around the area of Belorivka. But the Ukrainians have been able to hold on to this town pretty significantly for about the past year and a half to 2 years, because the Russians are currently having to once again fight uphill. Severodonetsk is on a promontory for the large part, overlooking Lysychansk to its southwest. But once you move into Lysychansk, moving out of that area, you actually once again start to go up into the hills just beyond that to the area around Verkno-Kamyanka, and then beyond that, Verkno-Kamyanske, Belorivka, and Hihorivka, which are some of the more significant villages that make up the Ukrainian defensive line that is protecting the larger town of Seversk several miles to the rear. From what we know, the Russians have been attempting offensives on this direction for around 2.5 weeks at this point, and appear to have made absolutely no progress at all, but have taken high losses in return. This area is one of the few areas where we actually see largely conventional fighting from both sides, because we understand that this area was deprioritized in the Ukrainian command a little while ago before this offensive began, because it's largely flat open terrain, and flat open terrain really isn't the best to conduct an offensive on for the Russians, and therefore the Ukrainians don't need to be putting a massive bulwark of defensive elements in this area, because the fact an offensive would happen would be fairly unlikely. Instead, they have prioritized the areas just north of that inside the Severonsky Forest, which you can see, at least in this satellite image here, had already been thoroughly destroyed and damaged due to the heavy fighting that had been going on there for some time. Also, the area just south of that towards the Chasiv Yar has also been prioritized as well. So for this reason, the Ukrainians largely didn't have all of the defensive elements in the full force that they have in other areas in this direction. And so that was what most likely led Russian commanders to decide that while this is a risky move, pretty much pushing over entirely open terrain with no breaks in the line of sight at all, they decided that it probably would be a fairly decent venture to conduct. Maybe it would even start to relieve the Russian forces that are fighting in the forests of Kremenna at the moment, and they would be able to push on towards Lyman, and together they would be able to create a strong thrust towards Slovyansk to be able to capture one of the key cities and also one of the key highways that travels deeper into the Donetsk Oblast and is still currently supplying Ukrainian fighting forces further south towards Chasiv Yar. At least that's what appears to have been the plan. But over the past week and a half, the Russians have met unbelievable resistance in this direction, even by the largely weakened, if we want to call it that, defenses by the Ukrainians in this area. The Ukrainians have still put up a very significant fight, and even around a week and a half to 2 weeks later, the Russians started the offensive at the outskirts of Belorivka, and they're still at the outskirts of Belorivka. They have not ended up capturing a single square meter of ground in this area, and from what we also understand, the Verkno-Kamyanka direction of this offensive, heading towards Zolotarivka and Verkno-Kamyanske, has also done fairly poorly as well, although we generally expected that, because the B line from Verkno-Kamyanka to Seversk is literally a wide open field for miles. There's literally almost no breaks in the tree line or any break in the line of sight there, and so for this reason, that means that any offensive in this direction is practically untenable or largely impossible due to the terrain. But the Russians have still tried, and they've been failing horrendously. And apparently the commanders of the 3rd Combined Arms Army have been looking at this area and going, this is a horrendous rate of success. In fact, they've made no success for the amount of losses that they're taking, and the Russian army is and of course in classified reports, hearing about. It's not at all the kind of picture that they want to paint, that they're just pouring Russian soldiers down the drain, pretty much killed and wounded, along with the large amounts of equipment that's being lost, and they're literally gaining nothing in this direction. And so for this reason, it appears that a scandal has been created, at least according to the Russians, from the top down, due to fear of not meeting these objectives due to the amount of losses that the 3rd Combined Arms Army is taking, to start lying about taking the settlements. So right now, to show you all our front line that we show that Bielorivka, Hihorivka, and Verkno-Kamyanske are still under control of the Ukrainian armed forces. Zolotarivka was taken a little while ago by the Russians, about a year ago, and so we have represented that on the map. Since the offensive has begun, this front line has not changed, but the Russians are claiming that their front line, and let me actually draw y'all a map right here so that way I can kind of show y'all what they're claiming. It looks something like this. This black line right here is actually showing the disparity in between where the current front line actually is and where the Russians claim that they are at the moment. It appears that even according to the Russian mill bloggers and everyone else who's trying to report on this situation at the moment, this information is entirely untrue by the Russian commanders, and for this reason, they're now arresting everyone literally from the top command of the Combined Arms Army down to the brigade and battalion levels that were involved in this deception of the Russian central government. This may start to show, at least in some senses, that the Russian central government is no longer trusting the loyalty or truthfulness of the commanders of the 3rd Combined Arms Army and the brigades and battalions below them in their command, because they are openly starting to lie about combat objectives, possibly to either mitigate casualties or at least make the Russian central government's and the Ministry of Defense's efforts directed elsewhere, probably towards the more active fronts at the moment, such as Toretsk and Pokrovsk, which are very heavily fought over battlefields at the moment. But it does seem as though the Russians are trying to find maybe a new scapegoat, because another thing that is interesting is that we have never heard these reports. And that's kind of the shocking thing. Usually we discredit most Russian reports because a lot of them are largely untrue and they're easily debunked. Like, for example, saying that they've destroyed 50 Abrams. There's not even 50 Abrams that have been provided to Ukraine at this point, so that's simply untrue. And on top of that, we still see Abrams in service to this day around the area of the Pokrovsk battlefield at this moment. We largely discredit statements that are made by the Russians, but I've never even seen the claim that the Russians have taken these areas by the Russians. I've never seen one of those reports come out, and it sounds as though it was some kind of a public report that was made, and that's why it's turning into, according to what they're saying, a major scandal. We don't really know what the story is behind this. Maybe it just slipped beyond our radar because it was a Russian report, which is still a little unlikely because we still pay attention to them off air, but we're not entirely sure what is going on with this. But still, a lot of people have been putting in their thoughts about this and thoughts about the claim that was made today that they're being arrested simply because they're liars. That doesn't seem anything shocking, though. Like, literally everyone in the Russian army and the government is a liar, so you would literally be putting everyone in prison at that point. But nevertheless, what are people thinking about this, Matthew? And what are you thinking about this as well? Do you think that this is actually a true statement? These commanders just simply lied about the offensive, I guess you could say, successes that have been made so far? Or do you think that there's something a little bit more deeper and a little bit more sinister involved with this story that we're hearing today? And what is everyone else thinking as well?
All right, so now that we have heard today that Russia has begun arresting top military commanders for lying, of all things. They do that all the time in the Russian military, but now all of a sudden it's a crime. And they've been lying about taking settlements like we've been discussing here. And what is the thoughts of the audience? So 71% said they are Putin's new scapegoats, while 20% said they actually lied and deceived Putin and he wasn't aware of it, while only 3% said it sounds like a minor deal. And this is certainly a big deal, because here's one thing that nobody's really paying attention to right now. Russia has a command deficit. They don't have a lot of really competent commanders, and in fact, the ones that are currently there are obviously not competent. They've proven that over months and months and months. They don't have the skills necessary to actually pull this off, so they're simply lying about their progress the whole way through. But I don't think Putin was ignorant of that. I think he did know that they were lying, and also other commanders knew they were lying as well. But now all of a sudden, they're not making the progress they needed to make, and Putin is starting to ask questions to his commanders right below him, and he's saying basically, hey, why are we not taking any land over here? And now the new scapegoats are going to be these top military commanders. So I think that's why they're getting arrested here. Someone has to take the blame, and Putin isn't going to take the blame. So now it's the fault of the military commanders, even though Putin's at the top. So I think I'm with the 71%. These are Putin's new scapegoats, and they're going to pay a pretty big price. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, I believe that it's actually a little bit of a mixture of both. They probably have lied, although I personally have not seen the lie publicly at any point, so I don't really know if that's true or not. I'm still assuming at some level they probably did make the claim, because pretty much all Russian commanders usually do lie at some point. But I also believe that they're trying to find some scapegoats to put the public's attention towards, so that way it's not towards the central government. Many people do know, like we've been reporting lately, that the Russian economy is going into free fall again. It goes into free fall every once in a while, and then they're able to stabilize the situation, and then it starts to collapse again. And of course, these past 2 weeks have been no exception, with the first and third largest property developers in the Russian Federation completely collapsing inwards on themselves and imploding. This is showing that the Russian Federation's economy isn't doing well, and not only that, their interest rates have been hiked up to, I believe, 25%, if I'm correct, Matthew, if I said that properly.
Yeah, the mortgage rates over there are hovering around 26 to 27%, so definitely not a small fry by any means.
And so for that reason, we do know that the Russian Federation's public, whether the Russians are willing to state this or not, are certainly feeling the economic pressure along with the rising inflation that is happening in the Russian Federation, along with the lack of pay in some instances for certain industries, which literally will just avoid paying their employees for as long as they can, maybe even missing couples of months of pay cycles and then only paying them a month's pay for those several months missed. Going off of that, we do understand that a lot of the Russian public is probably becoming very unhappy, not with the war in Ukraine, but just unhappy with the government, because that's who they're going to blame for the economic troubles. So for this reason, the Russians have to find some sort of a scapegoat to blame someone for what's going on. And so what the Russians will probably do is that they're going to arrest these officials, they're going to bring them to trial. It's going to be a massive thing in Russia that's going to be public, publicized more so. And what the Russians are going to do is that they're going to say, these horrendous commanders are dragging on this war even worse. They're probably operatives of NATO and the wicked imperialist West. And for this reason, the war keeps dragging on, and this is why the economy has suffered. Not because of Putin and the central government continuing to keep pushing this war forward, no matter how untenable it's becoming at this point. They just want to be able to ruin this entire great, wonderful thing that the Russian Federation is doing. It's not the central government, it's these guys in the Third Army right here. And that's probably what they're going to do, so that way public attention and anger is most likely directed at these guys who are going to be put in show trials, and not towards the Russian central government, who largely is responsible for the consequences that the Russian Federation has been facing for nearly 3 years at this point. And that's what we're largely expecting at this point. And once again, this is all just analysis, or more so observation, and really opinion based observation. We will have to wait and see what happens, but this isn't based off of nothing. We saw the exact same thing happen to Ivan Popov back in the day, who was the literal commander, the general of the 6th Combined Arms Army inside of southern Ukraine. He was truly one of the few competent commanders that the Russian army had at the time, and he was the one who actually stopped, we can largely credit, with stopping the Ukrainian summer offensive of 2023 that was expecting to reach Tokmak and Melitopol, splitting the Russian land bridge in two. We largely expect that it was under Ivan Popov's command in that direction that offensive largely ran into a brick wall and was stopped about a month in, and didn't really make it that much farther than Robotny and Verbove. Nevertheless, he said some very scathing things about the Russian government. They let a couple of months pass, and then they arrested him on trumped-up charges of corruption, and claimed that the war was going poorly because of him. It's terrible commanders like him, not the central government, and it's all his fault, and then they threw him in prison for a couple of years. So this analysis isn't working off of just thin air like the Financial Times kind of writes their articles on. This is actually working on hardened fact and principle that we've seen so far in the war that's largely been tried and true. And Ivan Popov isn't our only example. It's really the best and most famous example of this, or infamous example of this happening. But there are several others that have occurred so far inside of the Russian military. Just to name drop one of them, Sergei Shoigu. I mean, he was the Minister of Defense, and they pretty much did the same thing to him. They're like, the war isn't going on well. It's really his fault, not Putin. So he gets thrown out, or putting in a new guy. And then they put in the banker, and the war's not going any better under the banker, or the crypto bro, or whoever the hell that guy is.
It's weird. The banker's been awfully silent. Like, Shoigu was pretty much out in the open. Like, you saw him quite a bit. He made a lot of public appearances. That banker is staying, like, in the shadows. Like, I've barely seen him making any public appearances at all. And it's like, I think I've seen Shoigu at this point, who's no longer in the position, more than the banker.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what he's up to, really.
Dude, it's crazy, man. Like, I was thinking that too. I was like, this guy is out here, like, in the open. Shoigu is still, like, I don't even know how, but he still is. And then with a guy like the banker, I really don't even honestly know the name of the banker because he's out and about so little. It's like, I don't even know who the hell this guy really is, to be entirely honest. Still, like, he just disappeared and he's holding the position. And I would bet you this, man, that he's keeping a low profile so that way he's not given the chopping block. He's hoping that other people poke their heads up a little bit too high, a little bit further up above his, so that way they get their necks chopped off and not his, at least for now. That's probably his running strategy.
That's a double-edged sword, though, because at the same time, Shoigu had some minor support, like with the people, like, taking Shoigu out wasn't popular with everybody, but also at the same time, I guess staying in the shadows would prevent you from becoming a scapegoat, because it's hard to make a scapegoat out of somebody who is barely known by anybody. If Putin was to bring him out and say, hey, look, it's this guy's fault, everybody's like, who the hell is that? Like, we've never even seen that guy before. It's a banker, I guess, the Bitcoin guy. So that wouldn't be a very effective scapegoat. So I guess it could be a good strategy to, avoid falling out of a window or something like that.
Maybe so. And I also saw someone say, I'm surprised Shoigu hasn't fallen out of a window. I'll be honest, I am too, but I think that we shouldn't be that surprised because Shoigu in the modern day kind of holds the same reverence, at least to the Russian people, as Zhukov would have held during World War II. And while Stalin was a purge-happy maniac, he never purged Zhukov. Zhukov survived Stalin's reign and actually ended up living for a pretty good while after the end of World War II, under Khrushchev and a couple of other Soviet premiers. And that is largely because while Zhukov was not in Stalin's favor anymore and Stalin really did want to purge him, he was such a popular and well-known figure in the Russian Federation, largely attributed in World War II for the major successes that the Soviet army had on the battlefield, that there was really no way to justify purging the guy or having him executed as an enemy of the state because, according to most Soviets, he was the reason the state existed for the large part, rather than Stalin. And so I believe that Shoigu is kind of in that similar position. He was the Ministry of Defense for so long, his name was put out there in such a positive light for so long, I just don't think there's any way to purge him because the mindset of the Russians is probably that Shoigu is a legend. And so that's why he's never been purged, and I think that's probably why he's not going to be purged in the future. He's just fallen out of favor, and Putin lets him roam around and do whatever he wants, but he's no longer in any real position of power. I think that's largely how they're working with Shoigu at the moment. But still, with that, we are now going to be moving on from this major news of the purge that has happened inside of the 3rd Combined Arms Army, and we're actually going to be moving on down into Georgia, because today is another day. The sun has risen and set on another day inside of the Republic of Georgia, and specifically the little area of West Abkhazia. And once again, remind everyone, just to give a quick runner-up here of a story as to why this is different than the Republic of Georgia. West Abkhazia is a puppet state that was created by the Russian Federation after its invasion of Georgia in 2008. And let me go pull up the Russian-Georgian War so that way I can get you a little bit of lore here, so that way we can explore this a little bit better. The Russo-Georgian War was a war that happened for about 16 days in August of 2008. It was a very short-lasting war, but it did show some failings of the Russian army, and this war actually was used to reform the Russian army and bring it into its modern doctrinal standard, and to also try and conduct further reforms to improve their armed forces, which largely did not succeed, but we'll get into that a little later, maybe in another rabbit hole some other time. But nevertheless, this war largely created the puppet states that we see today. And let me move y'all down to the modern day map, where you can actually see the two puppet states that the Russian Federation has. So everything in yellow is the Republic of Georgia, which is the country that Russia invaded. The area that is striped in purple up here is Abkhazia, or as we call it, West Abkhazia. This area right here, which is just north of the capital of Tbilisi, is South Ossetia. And South Ossetia and Abkhazia are both largely a semi-official part of the Russian Federation, but they are run, in technicality, as semi-autonomous republics, where they're largely controlled by the Russian Federation, but technically have their own governments that are democratically elected. There's nothing democratic about the election processes in Abkhazia or Ossetia. They're pretty much rigged. rigged in the Russians' favor every single time, and this has started to pose some issues because the Russians are looking to drain any resources, really poke a straw into Ossetia and Abkhazia as much as they can to be able to try and at least alleviate in a very, very small way a lot of the strain that the Russian economy and the Russian resource industry is under at the moment because of the war. Abkhazia was directly affected by this because the presidential administration of Abkhazia was actually about to sign a bill that pretty much allowed the Russians to run the country clean, pretty much run its pockets, and take any and all resources and any monetary, I guess you could say, cash or any sort of assets that they had, and to be able to liquidate them for use in the war, or really for use by the Russian Federation's government. That's at least the best explanation I can give. There's a lot of people out there who would give a better one. But nevertheless, the Abkhazian people were really pissed about this, or technically the Georgians living in this puppet state were pissed off about this. And yesterday, that actually boiled over into open riots. A mob formed outside of the presidential building of Abkhazia inside of their main capital, which, let me move y'all down here and actually show y'all their main capital, which is Sukhumi right here. And we saw that they not only formed a mob, they stormed the Capitol building, and they ended up taking it over. The riot police were completely incapable of controlling the crowd, and today, things are getting worse. The rioters, or the mob, if you want to call them that, has not dispersed. They have in fact only grown in strength from what we're being told, and we were able to see that chaos is once again wrecking the capital of West Abkhazia today, as we were able to see that they were once again using military supply trucks to ram through the gates and clear ways into other buildings inside of the capital. Man,
holy crap.
Oh my
Jeez,
god.
man.
Did you see that steering axle up there, dude? That thing got snapped right there. No joke. Look at this. Dude, oh my lord. Crazy.
Also, I guess the fence isn't as strong as I thought it was because that thing's just gotten pushed over.
Yeah.
Man, this truck is like finished right here. It's shredded.
Also, by the way, you can see the flag of Abkhazia right there, Matthew. You know what it looks like, man? It looks like an American flag that has the colors of a watermelon because it's like green, white, and red. It's like, that's literally just the American flag, but like, it's like summertime colors or something like that.
Yeah, it's really kind of funky looking. I'm not sure if I like it.
I don't like it at all. I think it's stupid looking. Oh, you see them ramming the truck into the fence again. Actually, the dog's getting involved in the action now. Holy moly, dude. They got the dog coming in with a chair, but still, they're clearing the way.
They got that dog in them, you know what I mean?
Man, they got that dog in. But beyond that, these guys are clearing the way to take over more government buildings inside of Abkhazia. And once again, the central government of Abkhazia is losing absolute control of the situation from what we understand at the moment. And it's not getting any better. It's getting so bad, actually, that we have heard some very shocking information coming out of Abkhazia today. And let me make sure to directly read off of Anton Gerashenko's post, because there was a lot that happened today that was reported by Russian media and also media inside of Georgia and Abkhazia, but we don't have video and picture evidence of. We do have some picture and video evidence from TASS, but it doesn't cover every single instance or issue that happened today. So these are all of the bullet points of information that we got out of Abkhazia today. Russian media report that Bazhania fled Sukhumi, which, by the way, Bazhania is the president of Abkhazia, technically, for his native village of Tamish, 40 kilometers from the capital. According to Russian media, the two helicopters sent for Bazhania from Russia returned to Sochi without him, meaning that technically, at least according to the story, he's still inside of Abkhazia, but we're not entirely sure because there is a possibility that he has ended up fleeing out of the country, and the Russians just are not reporting that at the moment to make it look like the government of Abkhazia has not completely collapsed. The opposition is occupying government buildings in the capital of Sukhumi. Local Telegram channels report that they have established a coordination headquarters to maintain key government services in the president's absence. They are currently meeting with locals in the building of the presidential administration and called for citizens to gather in the main hall, which they already did, but it was not at the request of the government. Reportedly, the opposition has seized weapons from police armories. Military units are reinforcing security around weapons depots, while the special services are biding their time and do not back either the president or the opposition, showing that there is a wild card at the moment in this uprising, and that the special services may end up backing the mob for the large part instead of the president, and this may further accelerate the overthrow of the puppet government that's been set up by the Russians here since 2009. The opposition leader, Levon Mika, has warned that the parliament may vote on Bajania's removal, and a two-thirds majority is required inside the parliament to impeach Bajania. Pictured in the video below is Bajania arriving for a meeting with the local residents in Tamish, which is his local town that's about 40 kilometers away. He announced that he's ready to set a new election if the opposition leaves government buildings. So let's move to this clip really quickly and show y'all this. It appears that the security services almost look like Akhmat, no joke. I'm expecting that these guys are not that good at security.
We're going to go out for lunch, Bliat, whenever the enemy shows up, yes.
Bro, look at this little guy. Dude, this guy's like 4'7". The AK's like half as tall as him.
You don't know, man. Sometimes those little guys are scrappy.
Dude, he's going to fire the AK. He's just going to get blown backwards, man. Like, he's just going to go flying through a window or something. But there's the president. That's Bajania right there. Being surrounded by almost what looks like the Russian mafia. It's a very quiet time out there, but still, moving on from that and getting into the rest of the bulletins that we have, according to Russian bloggers, both the opposition and the current government have scrambled to secure support from Russia overnight. Russian military presence remains on high alert, but has so far avoided direct involvement. Ukrainian experts on Russian affairs, Vadim Denisenko, thinks that the current events might be connected to Putin's former aide Surkov. He stands to lose the most from the investment agreement and has ties to the opposition. Surkov may use the situation to his advantage to return to the Kremlin in exchange for a Swiss resolution of the Abkhaz political crisis. But it does seem as though the crisis is not going to be subsiding anytime soon, and it's only just begun, as the song goes, and we are generally believing that things are only going to be getting worse and worse. If the Russians do get involved, we will probably see that the mob gets crushed. That's what we're expecting at the moment. We do not believe that Bajania is going to be overthrown, because Bajania was installed by the Russians as the president of Abkhazia for the large part, and so we do not believe that the opposition is going to be getting any support from the Russian government, and that attempt is a fleeting and far-fetched one at best. If anything, the opposition in Abkhazia should generally be trying to get support from the Georgians, or maybe even outside countries like the Republic of Turkey that might be able to move in and help out at least a little bit, although we're not really sure the Turks' position on this, because the Turks are trying to slightly warm their relations with the Russians and pretty much everyone else within the Balkans and the Middle East as well. But moving into what people are thinking about this, it is something very interesting, because major riots are still occurring at this moment inside of Russian-occupied Abkhazia, and they're getting worse, as we were seeing today. The president is fleeing the main capital because of the riots, and also folks looking to maybe give him a trim, and not a trim of his hair, but of his head. But beyond that, a lot of people are wondering what will happen, and a lot of people are believing that Russia will be completely forced from Abkhazia. It doesn't really look like they're wanting to get involved. It doesn't really look like they're doing much to actually put this down for the large part. Some other people are believing that the Russians are actually going to come in and crush the uprising and bring back the reign of terror that has existed in Abkhazia for about a decade at this point, or a little bit longer than that, to be honest, around 15 years. Some other people say it seems like it will go away and the uprising will just eventually disappear, and others are a little bit unsure and undecided. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this uprising at the moment, and what are you thinking as well? Do you think that the Russians are actually going to lose Abkhazia, or do you think that they're going to come down and crush the uprising?
So this poll is actually pretty evenly split. 44% of the audience said Russia will be forced out of Abkhazia, as 34% said Russia will rain terror instead on the citizens there in Abkhazia, and 10% said it seems like it'll simply go away. And from what we can tell, it looks like the riots are actually intensifying, so it is not going away. It was not like a one-day little hiatus and then it suddenly disappeared. It looks like it is continuing. So I think the big question here is not whether Russia wants Abkhazia, because obviously they want to have that and keep it if they could. I think the big problem is, can Russia afford the manpower, basically the transfer of manpower from other areas where they desperately need it, for example in Kursk and also in the Ukrainian front line, to be able to keep Abkhazia in their control? And I think the big answer to that question is going to be no. Russia does not have the manpower needed to basically hold Abkhazia, so it probably will end up falling to the protesters, and also these calls to get the president out of there will probably be answered probably in favor of the civilians, honestly, since Russia can't respond to it. So I'm actually with the 34%. I think Russia will try to rain terror for a brief moment, but ultimately they really won't be able to pull that off. So it probably will be taken down and the Russians will probably be pushed out. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'm not entirely sure on this one, because the Russians could come down and try and crush the uprising, but at the moment, considering that it's been about 48 hours now, and we're still not seeing any direct Russian military involvement on the ground trying to put down the uprising. We saw that they tried to save the president. That actually kind of shows that they're really not that interested in this, to be entirely honest, because instead of sending in helicopters to save the president of Abkhazia, they could have sent in Russian ground forces in a quote-unquote peacekeeping mission to pretty much put down the uprising. They could have done that instead. Instead, they brought in a helicopter and like, you want to leave? The situation is getting really bad. And he was like, no, I'm good. I'll stay here. So I'll be entirely honest. I actually think that the Russians at this point are not really that interested in holding on to Abkhazia and may just realize that getting involved in trying to put down the uprising may be more costly than the resources and the benefits that they'll get by keeping Abkhazia. So I'll actually have to go with the 44%. They may actually end up being forced out of Abkhazia, not because the Abkhazians are going to defeat them in open battle. It may just be that the Russians are so stretched for cash and are so stretched for manpower to be able to deal with the situation. It is just one that is largely out of their control. If this
And also, Enforcer, I think another thing as well is the Russians are trying to weigh the pros and cons of basically transferring manpower down there. And the issue itself is really not that big of an issue. Basically, what Russia was trying to do that caused this entire riot to pop off was they were passing an investment bill in Abkhazia to basically let the oligarchs come in and buy up the land from the Abkhazian citizens for really cheap along the Black Sea right here because they want some seafront property. And that's what really pissed the civilians off. So ultimately, if they can't get their way on that, I don't think the Russians are going to go to war over it because, of course, they were simply trying to help out their oligarch buddies. But it is going to be a disappointment to the oligarchs, I think, but that's going to be pretty much it.
It probably will end up being one, but still, I do think that this may have pissed off the Abkhazian public enough that they want to maybe release themselves from the Russians, possibly, because we do have to remember that the Maidan had revolution, or the riots, whichever way you want to call it, that happened back in 2014 in Ukraine, were off of a very similar kind of a thing that sounds somewhat small. A couple of Ukrainians were going to be extradited into Russia to face trial there, and that was it. That's the entire thing that set off the Maidan-head revolution of 2014, and that's what led to the Russian Federation then using the chaos to, and also the overthrow of Yanukovych, who was the Russian-aligned and largely Russian-backed president of Ukraine. They used the moment in that confusion to annex Crimea and also start the conflict inside the Donbass. So once again, that was a very, very small flashpoint right there. It didn't really seem like that big of a deal to just extradite a couple of Ukrainians to Russia in almost a one-off deal, although it would have possibly been permanent if any Ukrainians had committed crimes in Russia or anything along those lines. But it still began what we would know today as the war in Ukraine. That was really the seed that was planted for what we're seeing right now in the past 24 hours. Kind of the same thing with Hong Kong. You would not think that a small thing like extraditing, I think it was like 2 citizens of Hong Kong into China to face trial there, would cause the massive revolts and uprisings that it did inside of Hong Kong, but it still did. And that was what led to the Chinese cracking down on them, sending in the armed forces pretty much, and then pretty much absorbing Hong Kong almost 100% into the People's Republic of China in almost every way, at least as far as the security apparatus was concerned. So going off of that, it's not out of the question to say that this one thing, while as small as it may seem, there is a decent precedent just in the past 10 years that such a thing could tip the scales and make the Abkhazians want to return back to being a part of the Republic of Georgia. And if the Russians really aren't that invested in trying to stop that from happening, it may actually end up unfolding that way, and Georgia largely reclaims its western finger of the country, all the way up to the area around Sochi.
That could be the case. It's very possible, and I think you might be right.
Maybe so. We'll have to see. But also, one other thing I want to point out to y'all, because this is something interesting here, is that the beaches on the Black Sea aren't that bad looking. They actually look pretty nice. Like, these are the Russian sides of the Black Sea, well, at least down near Sochi. Let me see if I can show y'all another picture here. Like, they're not that bad. They actually look pretty decent. And so what the plan was, like Matthew was explaining, is that the oligarchs would be able to buy more shoreline and develop it into pretty much rich and wealthy dachas for Russia's elite to come down and buy. Pretty much gentrifying the Abkhazian coastline and pretty much pushing the Abkhazians off the coast and into the mountains where there probably wouldn't be any economic prospects at all. Screwing them over, but benefiting the oligarchs of Russia a good deal. That's what's pissing them off, and that might honestly be, when you explain it that way, that might piss them off enough that they want nothing to do with the Russians from that point forward. And so I hope that does...
Also, what does the coastline look like down in Abkhazia, by the way? Like, zoom out for just a second so I can see where this is in Abkhazia.
So it's right
Let's
there.
see. So it's right there. So let's see, like, what's a good looking spot here along the coast? Like, why do the Russians want this seafront property so bad?
Let's see here. So this is
Oh wow.
this is actually pretty nice as it is. I think this is a wealthy spot though, because there's no street view in Abkhazia, which I knew was coming around the corner. But let me see if I can find one on a beach, because maybe we can get a look at a beach. Nope.
Oh wow.
Let's see. This is a basilica, and the paint's chipping off of everything. No restoration works being done there. Let me see if I can get us on a freaking beach, man, because this is okay. So here we go.
Also, Defender Marcia LSA said they want it because Crimea is more dangerous now. That's what I was thinking as well, Marcia. I was thinking they really don't want to go to Crimea because Ukraine occasionally hits it with missiles, and they're a little bit scared to go there because it's a little bit dangerous. The beaches are, littered with some munitions from here from time to time. So they figured, let's go down and take the Abkhazians' land instead. It's safer down there, and we'll just steal it from them, basically, and nobody will say a word, but they were very wrong.
And it does look like it is pretty nice. Like, the beaches are nice, the waters are nice. The Black Sea is generally a pretty nice place. It's kind of like the Adriatic of a sort. So that's probably why the Russians are, well, that's certainly why the Russians are wanting to develop it. And now that we've gotten that part, Matty, that you were just talking about, that really does come full circle right there, because the Russians are not really vacationing in Crimea anymore due to the attacks the Ukrainians keep conducting on the peninsula. So I guess they're just migrating further on south in between Novorossiysk to Sochi, and now the oligarchs are trying to take advantage of this economic opportunity, and they're trying to expand it on into Abkhazia as well.
I guess that shows how fragile, like, the Russians hold on these, like, satellite places. I mean, you really can't call it a satellite country, I don't think, but this satellite district that they have here within Georgia, they really don't have that well of a hold on it. Like, it's very, very shallow, and the Russians apparently thought they had a much deeper hold on it than they really do, because they had a lot of backlash from this. The riots are still escalating, and they are not taking this stealing of the land lightly whatsoever. So apparently Putin is finding out that his grip on things is not as strong as it seemed. And I think he's going to back down ultimately. I don't think they're going to go basically fight to the death over it.
I don't think they will, but before I say anything else, holy moly, Hawk just threw in a 300. Damn, that's crazy right there.
We just got a hawk flying in. Wow!
Man, I'm telling you what, that's impressive right there. And I got to thank you massively for that, Hawk. We'll be thanking you again here in just a second, because we're actually going to be moving on out of the Georgian news and on into Israel really quickly before we circle back into Ukraine and start covering the major frontline news that has been happening there. But before we do, I do want to make sure that we address a couple of questions, including Hawks. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so moving into our first super chat of the night. Real quick, just going back through here to make sure I didn't miss anything out of the live chat while I was talking, and it looks like we are good. So our first super chat of the night is going to go to none other than Hawk, who just threw in at that massive $300 donation, by far the biggest super chat of the night. And Hawk, thank you very much for supporting the channel. Yeah, that's really going a very long way right there, and we appreciate it with that massive $300 support, and sadly, no comment to address. But we appreciate it, and Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta give you a massive, unbelievable thanks for the support, Hawk. That is a massive super chat. One of the biggest that we've seen in months. And we gotta thank you incredibly for that, because if it was not for folks like you who enjoyed this channel and supported it and helped it to keep on running, we would not be able to make this thing possible. Usually the holiday season is a bit of a slow time on the channel for super chats, because everyone's buying Christmas presents and getting ready for things like Thanksgiving and Christmas. But we are massively appreciative of that, Hawk. I've got to thank you incredibly for that. It is an amazing thing. It helps us to keep this channel running. It helps us to be able to pay the bills and keep the lights on in the background, where we can do this as our full-time job, about 70 hours a week, 7 days a week, without stopping, without end. Unending work, unending labor, with vision, passion, and an effing mindset. But still, thank you so much once again, and I hope that does address that the best I can, Hawk, because you didn't throw in a comment, but that deserves a massive amount of thanks and appreciation, because you're pretty much making this entire stream possible tonight with that incredible support. And so, huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that addresses that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving away from that very generous support from Hawk, we're moving on to our second super chat of the night, and this one goes to none other than K-Dub Janky. It is K-Dub who puts in a $50 donation, and thank you very much, K-Dub, as always, for that generous support and, of course, being a channel legend. And they said, why is the Russian Empire, aka the Soviet Union, aka the Russian Federation, so prone to sudden government collapse? And it has happened frequently. And LSA War Academy, an enforcer channel of the solution to stupid media, and thanks enforcers.
And I thank you so much for the support, KW Janky, and helping this channel to keep on running. And that is actually a very interesting question, entrenched deeply inside of Russia's history, really Eastern Europe's history. And this all goes back, I'm going to sound like Putin here on that Tucker Carlson interview where he's like, I'm going to tell you a little story, and then he went on for like 40 minutes, but it kind of requires that. We're going to go all the way back to the 13th century, but I'm going to just quickly explain what happened then. That kind of lays the framework for why it always happens that way now. Back in the time of the 13th century, there was this guy that everyone in the world knows called Genghis Khan, who came from the plains of Mongolia and stretched forth across the entirety of Asia and Europe to pretty much conquer most of the known world at that time. And he was largely successful with it, especially in the area of Eastern Europe. Now, the area at the time was a very different place than what it looks like today, and the Mongol invasion is the reason why it looks different. Back in the day, the main culture that existed in this area was the Kievan Rus, which was largely a Ukrainian. It's really like, I guess you could say, the heart of Slavic culture is the Kievan Rus, founded by Vikings in the 900s along the Dnipro River here inside of Ukraine. And they would branch out from Kiev, considering that it was called the Kievan Rus, into southern Ukraine, and then they would end up stretching out into what's modern-day Russia, up into the area around Moscow, which was really the farthest north that they had gone by the time of the 13th century. But when the Mongols arrived, they took over the Russian area first, and then they took over the Ukrainian area next, or at least were moving into it, almost like a swarm of locusts. The Russian part of the Kievan Rus was largely subservient to the Mongols immediately. It's not because they were like a weaker or more cowardly people. They largely understood the cards were stacked against them. There was not a lot of people living in that area. It was just simply infeasible to fight them due to the numbers of the Mongols that had arrived, and not only that, they didn't have a great deal of resources in this area as well. So they bent their knee to the Mongols and largely existed under their rule for the next few hundred years, up until the Duchy of Muscovy pretty much kicked the Mongols out entirely, including the Golden Horde and such things, but that's a little later down the line. However, the Ukrainians inside of the Kievan Rus, which all of these people, I guess you could call them Ukrainians at the time, but the Ukrainians that were actually in modern-day Ukraine, around the actual heart of the Kievan Rus at Kiev, decided that they had enough manpower and enough resources to actually fight back and possibly defeat the Mongols, which is something that a lot of people have believed at that point, but simply hardly ever came true, because the Mongols fought very differently compared to how they fought at the time. It's a big thing. It's a giant rabbit hole that I have to go down to explain that, but just trust me, bro, on that one. They fought differently. No one really could beat them easily or really at all. And for that reason, the Mongols decided, under Genghis Khan's command, to make sure to pay back the Kievan Rus of Ukraine very specially by pretty much killing everyone down there and burning their cities to the ground. So pretty much anything from the 13th century or earlier than that in Ukraine does not exist. This was all destroyed by the Mongols around that time. And so for that reason, the population actually shifted massively in another direction. Instead of most of the Slavic peoples and most of the Kievan Rus living inside of Ukraine, they were now living inside of Russia, because so many of them had ended up getting killed inside of Ukraine, pretty much in the genocide that the Mongols made. And so for this reason, for the next few hundred, about 150 to 200 years, the Russian princes lived under Mongol rule, which was much more brutal and much more demanding than any kind of feudal system that had existed in Europe up to that point. And so the Russian leaders started to become very cutthroat with each other. They would screw over people below them. They would execute people below them without question. The people above them would execute them if they didn't meet their raw requirements, because this is how the system worked. The Russian princes had to pay a tithe, pretty much, to the Mongols to exist. Taxes, of a sort, is a better way to put it. And those taxes were a specific kind of resource that these regions could produce quite well, and it was different from region to region. But if these princes were not able to pay their taxes, or largely their tributes, to their Mongol warlords, the Mongol warlords would simply come in and kill them. And considering that the pressure was that high to get resources to their Mongol overlords, the Russian princes would kill anyone below them that was not able to meet the quotas because they were going to cost them their necks. So it created a very brutal form of a government system, completely different than the ones we see here in the West. After the Duchy of Muscovy, as well as kind of like a combination of Nizhny Novgorod to the north, kicked the Mongols out, or their last bit of control, around the 15th century, the seeds had pretty much been planted for the rest of history at that point, that there was going to be a brutal, despotic sort of a regime that was always in charge in Russia. That's why Ivan the Terrible is Ivan the Terrible. That's why pretty much every single czar treated everyone below them like garbage, and it was a very exploitative system on that level. Even the Soviet Union, which was trying to get rid of that, ended up reverting right back into it, because it's ingrained in the very political culture of how Russia exists on a government level. It was so deeply ingrained into the system during that 150-year control that the Mongols had in this area that it still exists to this day. And that's why the overthrows are always so rapid and so explosive when they happen, is because there really isn't room to have disagreement in the Russian system, and there's no room to see it either, because everyone knows if you say anything that looks like you're not happy with the central government or the very guy at the top, the head honcho, you're dead on the spot for the large part. It's just not allowed. So the murmurings of disliking someone quietly exist in very small circles, and those circles slowly grow over time, and the resentment's never seen publicly. It's all behind closed doors until they decide that they have enough power, and when they do it, they usually know that they have enough power to do it, to strike and overthrow either the existing government or the leader that's in charge, like the overthrowing of Gorbachev at the end of the Soviet Union, the overthrowing of Khrushchev in the middle of the Soviet Union. Really, the death of Stalin, which led to the, I guess you could say, the installment of Khrushchev. All of it was done through a lot of quiet political backstabbing and brutality, because if you do not do it that way, you largely end up just getting killed. So that's why there are always explosive and brutal government changes inside of Russia, because there's really no way to have a more peaceful and democratic change that's kind of heckled, well, not really heckled, but haggled out and spoken about publicly. It's just simply impossible inside of the Russian Federation. And that's why every single attempt during the 80s by Gorbachev in Glasnost and Perestroika failed. The Russian public just was not ready for that. They're never going to be ready for that culturally, because their culture does not accept that kind of a government. It's viewed as weak. You have to be strong. You have to run the country with an iron fist. Dissenters have to be executed, rounded up, and put into camps. That's how they work. Like, as a culture, that's just the level of government they run with. And that's why when Boris Yeltsin came in, the Russian White House, which is their version of the Congress, tried to overthrow Yeltsin and bring back the Soviet Union, and then Yeltsin turned into a dictator because they were trying to be dictators and overthrow him, and he just started bombing the White House and bombed them into submission while they were still inside the building, and then pretty much installed himself as a short-term dictator, then left, and then Putin came in and became the dictator that we see in Russia to this day. But there's no way that the government will change. The Russian Empire, the Soviet Union, and the Russian Federation are practically all the same government, but only different in name. It's always going to be some sort of a dictatorship of the sort. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, Kato Evgenki, and kind of give the historical explanation for why that happens. But it's a completely different form of a government system than exists really anywhere else. And so I hope that addressed that incredibly well. I feel like that was a kind of a deep rabbit hole. Hopefully it wasn't as long as like a Putin-linked rabbit hole that just went rambling on and on with like no point. Hopefully it made
let me tell you something. If you just simply give me a minute, you just be quiet a minute. I'll tell you about the history of the Cheez-It if you'll be quiet. And you know, back in the 1800s, the Cheez-It was started, and they made these nice molds for the cheese, and they said I wanted it crunchy, and I said, well, actually, let me go on this. Remember when the Twinkie was created? Meanwhile, just sits there with that dog face look on his face, going, I'm so scared. I'm so scared. Talkie G was so scared during that interview, I'll tell you.
Man, I liked it though whenever he'd actually just try and ask a question, Putin would go, what do? You work at Chuck E. Cheese, or are you an actual journalist? Anyways, I was wanting to tell you about this blister on my foot. The blister is terrible. It started about a month ago. It had this weird red look, and then he'd go on for like 5 minutes on something, and then he was like, I have a file here, you see, of a map that was made by us in the day that claimed that we owned this land because we were trying to impress false territorial claims against the Polish-Lithuanian Republic. Here, I'll let you see it. It's proof of what I'm saying. It's like, dude. It's like, come on. And then he never showed proof for anything else he said beyond that point. That whole thing was a tactic just to make it seem like he was a trustworthy person. And Tucker didn't even look at any of the stuff that they had in that file to see if it was even true. It's like he just like took it at face value. It's like, what kind of journalism? Anyways, moving on from that, though, I hope that does explain the whole historical side of things with the Russian government. And thank you so much for the support, K-Dub Janky, and allowing me to take a moment to explain why the Russian government looks very different than Western governments, or really what I would call democratic government systems or self-determining governments, which largely exist because of the special kind of political culture that was created in Western Europe over thousands of years, and really always existed somewhere in the foreground. But anyways, with that, we are on to the last question of the segment, just so that way we can make sure to get back into the news. So what is our final question of this segment, Matthew?
All right, so the last one of the segment is going to go to another channel legend, someone that's been around for ages and also donated to the fundraisers and also to the channel as well. It's Steve Watkins at work, and he is still at work even to this day, and he puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Steve, for that support, and we appreciate it very much, of course. He said, here's a comment for you. Take a question from the live chat.
And I thank you so much for the amazing support, Steve Watkins at work, still at work, toiling away deep in the mines. And also Steve Watkins is going to be like, I'm not at work, man. But we have to go with the joke. It's a great one. But I still thank you so much for the support, Steve Watkins at work, and helping the channel to keep on running. Thank you for enjoying the channel and supporting it, because folks like you are pretty much the sponsors of the show. We don't have sponsors on these streams that pretty much tell us what we can and can't say. We get to say exactly what we want on these streams and how we want to say it. We don't have to worry about YouTube AdSense because we simply don't have that on either. Y'all are the folks who help us to be able to have a voice and be able to have the monetary stability to do this as a job and speak what we speak. I hope that everyone enjoys that a great deal, because we put a lot of effort and a lot of passion into this every single night. And I got to thank everyone who's been here watching so far tonight. At the peak tonight, crazily enough, we actually got up to, I believe, 9.7 thousand live viewers at the peak, which does show me that the Jake Paul Tyson fight had a massive impact, because we were like 4,000 viewers short yesterday, or live viewers short at least. So I'm happy to see that everyone has returned. Also, by the way, I don't mean to harp on this too much, but what do y'all think about the Jake Paul Tyson fight? I didn't get to personally watch it, but I've been hearing some stirs out there today that it was one of the worst fights ever. But beyond that, I do thank you so much once again for the support, Steve Watkins at work. I hope that does address that fairly well, and we will make sure to get a question from the chat in your honor, because Steve Watkins at work, you are one of the old guards and channel legends of the LSA through and through. And so, Matthew, what do we got for a live chat? Hello?
All right, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Hello? Onto the live chat.
Good, because I can't. You're lagging a lot. So anyways, hopefully you can hear me. This live chat question goes to Nap Soeso, who says, what was the Russian response to Ukraine threatening to use nukes very recently?
We have actually heard no public response from what I've been seeing. So from what I'm generally understanding, I'm hearing that there's almost no response to that. I don't know if the Russians just didn't take that seriously or what, but I haven't seen any response from Peskov or Lavrov or anyone who would usually make a statement to something like that so far. So to be honest with you, it looks like the Russians have given no comment. I don't know, maybe they're preparing for something in the background instead of publicly stating something, but in the diplomatic world, everyone always has to say something about everything, so it is a little weird to see that there has been no comment so far. So I hope that addresses that fairly well, at least the best I can, because that's about the best input I could give at the moment. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Thank you so much once again for support, Steve Watkins at work, and helping this channel to keep on running, and we will be trying to look to see if the Russians do make a comment on the statement that was made by a Ukrainian MOD official just a few days ago. But moving on from that and out of the question segment, it is now time for us to get on into the rest of the news. And moving on into the Kursk Oblast, we have fairly decent news to report for the Ukrainian side. The Russians have still been conducting full-scale offensives in this area, trying to drive the Ukrainians out of Russia, and they've continued to fail. There is no actual efforts, no real progress that is being made on pushing the Ukrainians out. And it appears that the Russians are still taking high losses today, along with their North Korean counterparts that are also in the area. We were able to see that a Ukrainian RPG hit this Russian vehicle at very close range. That is a BMP down there, and I think that the Russian crew just had a little pee in their pants kind of a thing. Not really a BMP, but still a P nonetheless. And we can see that the BMP got hit by the RPG. It's now rolling kind of to a stop. everyone's bailing out, and one guy almost looked like he got ran over.
Yeah, he almost got smashed, man. He almost got flattened.
And they're all now running for cover. So what happened here in this clip? What happened, you say? Well, I'll tell you what happened. This RPG guy had one of the luckiest hits ever. He actually hit right at the front of the BMP, and the interesting thing about the BMP, a lot like really any APC, is that the engine is in the front of the vehicle. So his RPG slammed right through the side plate of this armored personnel carrier, right into the engine, and completely eviscerated the thing. The engine was dead as soon as this hit landed, and that's why you see that the vehicle pretty much is out of control at this point and just slowly grinding to a stop and going off the road as well, because the driver has lost all control of the vehicle. The driver might not even be around at this point. Well, no, actually it looks like he may be trying to climb out there. Yeah, he looks like he might be. Can't really tell for certain.
The BMP is just going to be a steamroller. It's just going to slowly steamroll everything in its path until it runs out of gas.
Man, once it got hit, you just heard boop, boop, boop. It's just backing up or something like that, just very slowly over everything, like an old man driving over a handicap sign at a parking stall. But moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see them hitting more Russian forces because, alas, in between that last clip, which probably was in the past 24 to 36 hours, which is in today's clip, and today, snow has fallen in Kursk. And so now it really does look like the Battle of Kursk. And so here's the clip. It's a Russian pickup, and that's a Russian soldier right there. He didn't even do anything, man. He just looked up. He was like, oh, hello. Look at him. He's just like, oh, hey there.
I guess he thought the truck was going to outrun the drone. He looked very confident, but, you know, he should have known as he saw it creeping up like that, this isn't going to go well. Like, jump out or something. Like, you're better off, like, breaking a leg than, like, taking a direct drone hit.
Yeah, I would say so. Also, that little electronic warfare system that they have on the roof of that truck didn't really do them that much good, did it?
No, it's probably a phony anyway. They probably, like, bought it off of eBay.
It's probably a dime counterfeit. but beyond that, we got to see the drone slam into the back of the truck, and the image ends as it did blow up right on top of the pickup truck. But moving on from that and towards Bolshoi Soldatskoye, where the legendary battle in between the 225th Battalion of the Territorial Defense Forces and the 810th Naval Infantry Brigade is going on down, we were able to see that the Ukrainians were still hitting Russians in this area. And so here's the clip. Oh, it's one of those little Desert Cross ATVs. Oh, and they got it down on the nail. Bada boom, jugga jugga blia, and it's toasting out there. Oh my lord, what a fire.
Man, this drone's going spastic around it too.
Dude, that thing cooked.
Let him cook.
Let him cook. And the Ukrainians did let him cook. Well, you now see another FPV drone coming in. It's targeting some kind of it looks kind of like a Lada Niva, but it slammed into the side passenger door, and we were able to see that later on, this thing had cooked as well. Let him cook. Or as Chef Cousteau said, anyone can cook. And in the Russians' case, literally anyone can cook as long as you're inside of a Lada. But we can see here a Buhanka also being targeted as well. The Russians have already made it into the fields.
Oh.
Bro, the windshield wipers were on that thing. Did you see it? Like, as the drone's coming in, the windshield wipers were still on.
Man, they didn't even have a chance to turn it off. And also, what did they covered up the headlights on the Buhanka?
I couldn't really tell. Maybe they did. Oh, and we could see the damage to the Buhanka. The front windshield was blown out and the roof caved in a good bit. And it kind of does look like they covered the headlights with something. I don't know what that is.
Looks like maybe an orange filter, maybe. Also, Connor Van Deventer said, how fast are these drones that we're watching in the video? They've got to be going, in my estimation, just looking at the video, it looks like they're going probably about 60 miles an hour, if that's an accurate guess, because these trucks are moving pretty fast, and these drones are overtaking the trucks, so they're pretty quick.
And they are super quick. We do believe that they go about 60 miles an hour, but the damage that was imposed today was a pretty good bit, considering that snow usually starts to slow down combat activities a decent bit, at least from what we understand over the historical precedents laid over the course of the war. But we were also able to see that the Russians ended up hitting some mines in another direction. Once again, this is right before the snowfall that we saw in the first clip, so this is probably about 36 hours old, but still was published today, so it becomes a part of today's news cycle. But here is several Russian vehicles closer to Gary, or Gurki actually, hitting some anti-tank mines. It's always a fun time to watch this. There goes one of them. Schmucky. And here comes another one. And oh, right into the corn. Children of the corn, as a matter of fact.
It's a freak on the leash.
Ooh. Pieces went flying off of that Akhmat.
That Akhmat?
Yes, it's not only a group of Chechens, it's also an armored car.
Oh.
It's a good armored car, Don. But we can see one of the vehicles right there just got hit. Now here comes another one. Oh, cooking! And there's a second one right behind it. Oh, and it's cooking as well. This video is just laggy, man, like naturally. Like, I feel like our video is like buffering, but it's not. It's just how the video is. But we can see them all out there cooking. They cook
Man, I'm
together.
starting to think that Alabama Wi-Fi is just crappy all the way around because, like, I'm still having lag over here, and also you're having lag on your end on Twitter as well. It's kind of weird.
Oh, no, I'm not having lag on Twitter. The video is, this is how the video looks.
Well, my Twitter's lagging. I don't know about yours, but mine is.
I'll tell you, man, we're hooked up to Ethernet. To Ethernet, man. And we still are having this trouble. I have to agree with you. At this point, I just think Alabama internet is trash. Like, I just think that is a hard and true fact at this point.
Oh, look at this thing. It's going through the Hellblazers right here.
Man, that thing's a hellblazer right there, my boy. A hellblazer. You'll do what you're told. Moving on.
You'll do what you're told.
Oh man, and speaking of which, we got to do it, Matthew. It's that time of the night. I completely forgot about this. We have to go and check the census for Hot Dog Man. Because I wonder how many citizens of Hot Dog Land are left. Because you were just speaking of you'll do what you're told. Oh, it looks like he's still hovering around that same number. He'll probably lose another 100 here in a week. But we also got to see.
Oh man, holding on to him for dear life. I can't let them go. Don't leave me, please.
Aw, man, guess what? I'm going to run another stream. Aw, man, it's going to be like 7 hours long. Aw, man, and at the peak, there's going to be about 170 people there. Aw, man, cry and cope harder. Aw, man. But moving on from that, we were able to see a Ukrainian Uragan. This is a Ukrainian Uragan, kind of a little rare, actually, firing off its rockets at Russian forces in Kursk.
За вільну неньку Україну, за Тараса брата. Курська область буде наша. Слава Україні! Ловіть, сука, ублюдки!
And any second now, they will start.
That's very impressive. I like how it throws up chunks of mud from the backblast.
Mud and dirt. And really just vaporized, atomized dirt as well.
Буєм.
You're going to put a little dirt in their eye.
Man, they're going to put some dirt in their eye. But beyond that, that's the end of that clip right there. And we're now going to be moving on from the area of Kursk and on into the location unknowns, as we were able to get a couple of interesting clips right here. We were able to see a clip of the Ukrainian Leleka at work. These are the normal kind of Ukrainian recon drones, but it's interesting to see their operations here and there and just show them off. Here they come with the Leleka, and they're now setting up its launching post, putting together the Leleka, putting on the camera system as well, giving it a little test, and then giving it a little launch. And we can now see here the Leleka on its way, finding Russians and reporting them back, and getting them slammed by Ukrainian artillery in the middle of the night. They grill them at night.
It's got to be scary for those Russians. They just go along at night, waiting for some salt and pepper to land on their head, or maybe a buzzing drone or something. Wow, that thing had a hard landing.
Yeah.
Eternal Flight Brothers.
A long-lasting flight, or something like that. But moving on from that,
flight.
Long-lasting flight.
No, it's not long-lasting. They wish it was long-lasting, but it never really is. They're flying. What's the other saying? It's Eternal Flight Brothers. That's what Fighter Bomber, the Russian Telegram channel, always says when their pilots die. Or they'll say something like, Earth is ground and sky, brothers, or something like that.
Dude, that one sounds like a Chinese proverb, man. Like one of those things you would hear in the workplace, like Earth is ground or something like that. It's like, yes. It's like, I think that's right. But we also get to see...
Worker is angel if they work overtime, but devil if they take salary.
man, never truer words have been spoken. Like, man, oh man, there's many jokes to make about Chinese working conditions, but as I've heard, they are slightly improving just a little. But still, we were able to see the 82nd Air Assault Brigade in training, and boy, look at them go, wearing the yellow safety vests of glory and clearing buildings one by one. Great stuff, and hopefully they're still doing well in the training. But moving on from that and into the next clip, we also got to see the Russian Federation's losses over the past 24 hours, and holy moly!
Oh my God, man. 6 Bobcats. Not records or anything like that, but the troop losses are staying very high, and that is not good for the Russians. No, 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 not good at all, but tell us more.
Man, I'm telling you what, them losses are juicy. 1,650 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 26 APCs, 69 supply trucks, nice, 8 main battle tanks, 28 artillery pieces, 28 drones, and 6 Bobcat skid steers. According to Miss Disa, keeper of the records, 1,650 Russian personnel wounded and killed is the 8th highest daily troop loss, and this is approximately the average for the past 7 days, totaling 11,700 troop losses in a week. Very impressive stuff, and a big shout out to Miss Disa for compiling those numbers once again. Moving on from that and now of the casualty report, it's now time for us to move on into the area of Vovchans, where we got a brief look at one of the Ukrainian positions in the town today, as the 57th Motorized Rifle Brigade allowed us to take a little look. Whoa, is that vlogger music? Not on my watch. We don't have music at all on this channel, except for sick beats made by our own work and our own skill and hands and labor and hard work. And let's talk about buttered sausage. Where does it come from? Why is it doing that? What is it? Where is it going? Get it out of my face. Have you ever seen that, Matthew?
Buttered sausage.
Have you ever seen that, though?
What was that, Hot Dog Man's new gig?
No, dude, I'm going to have to pull up the clip for you, man, because it was this crazy guy, and he was like, let's talk about buttered sausage. Let's talk about buttered sausage. Why is it here? What is it doing? I'm like, let me see if I can go find it, man. Let's talk. Yeah, there we go, about buttered sausage. There it is. Oh, my Lord, dude. This guy is freaking crazy. I don't know who the hell he is, but I heard this clip before from a meme, and I was like, this is freaking whack. So while this clip is still playing and they're showing their positions, I'm going to play Let's Talk About Buttered Sausage in the background. So here we go.
Let's talk about your cable ace award.
Let's talk about buttered sausage. Talk about buttered sausage, where it comes from, what it does, why is it doing what it's doing. Get it out of my face. What about buttered sausage?
Like, this
Sounds like Gary Busey.
I think it is. Yeah, it is him. Like, it is him. But dude, it's like, what the hell's wrong with him, man? Like, he's like, let's talk about buttered sausage. Let's talk about buttered sausage. What is it doing? Why is it here? Get it out of my face.
Is that actually Gary Busey saying that?
Yeah,
Like, what? Let me see the video. Like, is there like something I can see?
I can't show it because it's from a pretty like on up there kind of a podcasting. That was like a meme clip, so I can't like show the video, but I could let the audio be heard because it's like a meme thing. So that could work, but I can't show the clip. But still. That was unhinged, but I heard it and it made me laugh today, and I was like, I'm gonna have to say that at some point on the stream. So with that is the end of the clip in the Vomchon's front, and we're now gonna be moving on. Dude, that's what Hot Dog Man does though, man. When he's starting to run out of subs, he's like, let's talk about buttered sausage. What is it doing? Where is it here? Get it out of my face, or something like that. Actually, Hot Dog Man would say, get it in my face. But moving on from that and down into Clementa, we did get to see some Brazilian volunteers defending the woods.
Holy crap. Scared the hell out of me.
Well, that was one hell of a clip right there, and I actually did not watch it that far to see that it exploded. I watched it until he aimed the machine gun. I was like, okay, he's just going to lay down some machine gun fire. I didn't know that a round slammed so close nearby that it literally flung the camera down to the floor. But moving on from that and into Seversk, we also got to see a tank heading to the front. And that's the end of the clip right there, but still showing us one of those tanks from the 54th Mechanized Brigade at work. Moving on from that and down towards Chasiv Yar and Bakhmut, we also got to see that an entire Russian platoon got wiped out. And we're going to be muting that. That's when you sit there and ask a Russian very quietly in the night, hey, do you have vodka? He goes, da, or something like that. That's literally what they would say, dude. Listen.
That's creepy. It's as creepy as that pear or that cherry down there in the bottom of the screen, looking very, very suspicious down there. Like, what did you say, brother? Can I have an oat?
Man, that thing's looking like it just saw a Diddy freak off down there, man. It's like, what the hell? Like, that's like the face it has, man.
He opened the wrong door at the wrong time.
What's up with all the baby oil? Ain't nothing like a Diddy party. No, like something like that, but we can still see the HIMARS absolutely obliterated this unit. We can see more HIMARS rockets coming in.
Oh, don't worry, folks. That baby oil is from Costco. I bought it in bulk.
What
Even though they
Costco,
don't sell baby oil.
guys? Also, Matthew, I just want to make sure that we clarify this because it does look like there was a slight stir. Someone out there is saying that Iran is getting bombed, like right now. Is it, Matthew? Can you tell us, like, from your preliminary look on Twitter, is it?
So let me tell you here, is Iran getting bombed? That's the big question of the night. That's the question that many have been wondering about. Is Iran getting bombed? Because of course we know that the tensions are really rampant in the Middle East right now. So it looks like, from what I can tell, Iran is not getting bombed. And considering the source of that information in the live chat, I am not shocked that it is not accurate, because it usually never is accurate. So not shocked.
And let me see here. Let me see. Let me check this really quickly. Let's see here. In 1 second. Let me make sure to get rid of that, Matthew. I see that some people come in, man, and they just start saying stupid stuff now to try and instigate. Like, make sure to look out for that. Because if someone says something like, wait, are they saying this? Just man them off the bat, because I'm seeing that people are coming in and doing this interesting thing. Because, like, we have not mentioned a single word about people who have formerly served in the armed forces tonight at all. And then someone came in and said, wait, they're clowning vets? That's like, we haven't even said anything like that. So, Matthew, that appears to be the new bot strategy, is to just come in and say something like that and start getting people riled up because they don't know if we said it or not. So if you see anyone saying that and we've never even said anything close to it, just ban them on the spot. But moving on from that, let me go see. Let's see here. 1 second. I'm going to go check this. So, well, Matthew, I'm not going to lie. It doesn't even look like that source is... Well, that source is live, but it looks like they're saying Ukraine and not Iran, so that may have been a bit of a typo there. But moving on from that and out of the area, we're now going to be moving on down from Bakhmut and towards Touretsk, where we were actually able to see some action in the sky and on the ground, because Earth is sky and ground. And so check this out. We were able to see the Ukrainian 28th Brigade, which is in the area, knocking out Russian drones over the city of Touretsk.
Oh, man, it's a Horton hoe.
Man, I'm telling you what.
Someone said, you mean somebody would just go on the internet and tell lies? I know, right? Nobody on the internet ever lies about anything. Everybody's an honest saint.
Man, yeah, I wouldn't believe the amount of stuff people lie about, like the train hijinks. That's like the worst.
Oh, not
one.
The train
Oh,
thing.
my
I forgot
God.
all about that, man. The train. Oh my God, they hijacked a train with nukes on board. Can you believe it? And they did that for what, like 2 weeks in a row or something like that? And everybody kept coming to live chat talking about, wait, did you hear about that train that got hijacked? I'm like, what? Like, it's not like the 1800s or something like that. It's 2024. What are they talking about, a train getting hijacked?
Man, dude, they were sitting there, man, talking about, man, did you hear about that train that had like nuclear bombs on board? The Ukrainians rode up in a posse next to the train on horses, jumped on the train, threw the conductor and the engineer out, and then just drove it across the border into Ukraine. They got a nuke now. And I'm like, what are y'all talking about? And it was like everything, like every single day, it was something new. It would be like fighter jets, top tanks of the Russian army, you know, stealth fighters, nuclear bombs, you know, an entire Russian brigade of soldiers just transported across the border by train, and they all surrendered after they crossed the border. It was like the craziest stuff, and it went on for like 2 straight weeks, and like we knew, like, just to tell y'all this is always coming from different channels. Like, the nuclear bombers are flying is always a famous one. And also, oh my God, the Ukrainians just took over a train in a great heist, and they're driving across the border right now like it's a GTA 5 or something. And there are 2 channels that do that. And after they started doing that, all my faith and credit in them plummeted to nothing. It wasn't really high from the start, to be honest, but it went down to literally straight zero. But moving on from that and into the ground near Druzhba, but we were also able to see the Ukrainian 92nd Brigade fighting around the area, trying to get a Russian to surrender. He didn't, so the fight kept going. So here's the clip. See this fella firing his AKM right here.
Давай, давай, сука! Заебашу! Ты сам! Ты с пидорами!
He's yelling at the Russian.
Ты ранен! Ты ранен! Стой! Ты, братан, выходь! Сейчас я гранатку только подготовлю на всякий, что понял?
And that's the end of the clip right there, but still, very interesting to see some of the fighting on the ground. Moving on from that and down to the Pokrovsk area, though, we were also able to see the movement of wounded Ukrainian soldiers.
You, go with them. Go with them.
Поможи йому на цей, на кузов.
I got one.
We see him hopping out of the armored car here. It looks like one of the American armored cars. I don't know the name of this one, though. I think you know the name of it, Matthew.
It's that Marine one. I can't remember the name either.
It's like an MATV. It's not that. It's not. I'm trying to think of what it is. But when you hear a firefight happening in front of them as they try and evacuate the wounded.
Is wounded.
And that's the end of the clip, but still showing...
JLTV, that's what it's called.
Yeah, that's what it is. Those things are pretty cool. But moving on down into the area of Mykolaiv, we also get to see the Ukrainians slamming the Russian forces with their drones in this direction, thanks to the SBU. We were able to see a little Russian column of bikes and trucks moving on their way down. This, of course, did not bode well. They couldn't hit a single shot. Time and time again, the drones came in, and the Russians just simply could not take the things down. Problem is, they don't have automatic shotguns, and they also don't have any electronic warfare systems, and this guy didn't even know that it was upon him now. But now it's his, and his time has come. But we can now see another Buhanka getting hit as well, along with a couple of Russians wandering around the burning debris of the Buhanka, trying to figure out what they're going to do next. And we can just see them getting slammed, Matthew. I mean, it's slam dunks every day.
Just slamming them, man. Just get slamming them every day. It's just they can't catch a break, these Russians. I wonder why.
Oh,
I guess their commanders ought to stop lying.
Man, speaking of which, man, speaking of not catching a break, you ever heard of this guy called FoozyTube or something like that, Matthew, on
Yes.
YouTube?
Yes,
Oh, my
I've heard of
Lord.
that guy.
Dude, I saw some clip of him the other day. He was going off on a cameraman. I think he beat the cameraman or something like that. But he was screaming at the guy, man. He was like, if you don't want to be real, you would work at Chuck E. Cheese because they need another rat. And I was like, okay, the guy's insane, but that was actually pretty good. I was like, that was a pretty decent one. But moving
I
on.
think he's got some mental health issues, like really bad ones, actually.
Apparently he does, but still, I do have to admit, though, that even with all that going on, saying that you need to go work at Chuck E. Cheese because they need another rat, like, I was like, okay, that's actually a pretty decent one. I was like, that was actually like a diamond in the rough out of that whole deal. But also, say what?
I was just laughing at that. I was like, I got a kick out of it.
Yeah, that's it, dude. It's like, we might have to use that one against Hot Dog, man. I'll have to, like, get the same emphasis and everything. Like, I'll just have to be, like, screaming so hard, like, my vocal cords are literally ripping apart, and be like, they need you at Chuck E. Cheese because the world needs another rat or something like that. It's like, man, that was a good one. But moving on from that, we also get to see a picture of a drone operator near Robotny. Check it out. Very nice to see. And I know what some people are about to say, ooh la la, because it's a woman. So interesting. But still, nice to see the drone operators down there at work. Moving on from that, though, and out of the Ukrainian front lines, it's now time for us to circle all the way up to Kyiv, as we were able to hear today that there was a secret arrival of the Japanese foreign minister at the central railway station in Kyiv. We don't know what they're there for, but it does appear that the Japanese are making, I think, their third visit to Ukraine. So with that, and that's the end of the clip right there, and we're now going to be moving on into that speech, that wonderful, amazing speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky on day 997 of the war. And so, without further ado, here's the speech. Speech!
Give me a speech.
A long-lasting speech.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці, українки. Щойно зустрівся з міністром закордонних справ Японії. Він з візитом в Україні. Важливо, що це перший його візит в іншу країну одразу після призначення нового уряду Японії. Візит в Україну – це і символічно щодо наших відносин України та Японії, і дуже практично. Зараз ця війна в Європі вирішує багато чого для всього світу. Я подякував пану міністру і всій Японії за надану Україні підтримку від початку повномасштабної війни – 12 мільярдів доларів. Японія – справжній лідер в Азії у захисті міжнародного порядку, заснованого на правилах і просто життя людей. Ми обговорили і те, що тепер Північна Корея стала спільником Росії та допомагає Путіну в цій злочинній війні. Я поінформував про активність північнокорейських військових на Курщині, про всі загрози від співпраці Пхеньяна та Москви. Росія вчить Північну Корею сучасній війні, і це може стати причиною значної ширшої дестабілізації. Маємо разом і усіма іншими нашими партнерами цьому протидіяти. Є новий пакет підтримки від Японії. Звичайно, ми говорили з міністром закордонних справ Японії про посилення санкцій проти Росії, про нашу економічну співпрацю з Японією, про відбудову і про те, як наблизити справедливий мир. Ми готуємось і до розмови з новим прем'єр-міністром Японії. Провів сьогодні ще одну нараду з підготовки нашого внутрішнього плану стійкості, пункт про політику героїв. Доволі широка була нарада, не тільки Міністерство ветеранів, різні урядовці, багато аспектів. Дуже важливо, щоб було не менше конкретики у рішеннях держави. Конкретні програми, які працюють, конкретні заходи підтримки, конкретні речі в питаннях пам'яті про війну і подвиг українського народу. І конкретні пропозиції на післявоєнний час для наших воїнів, які довели, що є найбільш міцною силою в Європі, здатною захищати свій дім і всю Європу. І це лише один з багатьох аспектів, в яких внутрішній план стійкості України взаємопов'язаний із планом перемоги, який ми представили партнерам і який може бути реалізований саме партнерами. Українці щодня доводять своєю сміливістю, своєю стійкістю, що можуть зупинити Росію. Сміливість і стійкість потрібні і від партнерів. Ще кілька речей. Сьогодні День працівників радіо і телебачення і зв'язку. І я вдячний кожному і кожній, хто усіх нас в Україні та у великій українській спільноті у світі пов'язує інформацією, емоціями, зв'язком, головне – розумінням, що Україна є і завжди буде. Вдячний усім нашим людям, які навіть в найстрашніші моменти забезпечують для українців можливість поговорити з рідними, почути, як Україна, як вона бореться, що Україна робить, чого Україна прагне. Ніхто в Україні не має відчувати себе наодинці, коли ми усі об'єднані, в тому числі інформацією, в тому числі зв'язком, в тому числі українською емоцією, відчуттям, що ми подолаємо все. І сьогодні ж я зустрівся з українськими студентами, з представниками студентського самоврядування з усіх регіонів України напередодні Дня студента. Я подякував їм за те, що вони в Україні, за те, що вони такі активні, і бажаю, щоб всі наші молоді люди, усі наші майбутні покоління могли реалізувати себе в Україні, в мирній, безпечній та незалежній державі. Дякую всім, хто допомагає. Слава Україні!
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 997 of the news of the war in Ukraine. And that rounds out our news summary for today. I got to thank every single one of y'all so much once again for watching so far. There's still 7.5 thousand of y'all here, and boy howdy, is that one hell of a number. That's an incredibly high number of people to have here at this point in the stream, around 1 hour and 45 minutes in. At the peak tonight, we were able to reach a peak viewership of 9.7 thousand viewers. course, welcome back to
Wow.
everyone who was not here for the who was not here because of the Mike Tyson Jake Paul fight. We wished you all the best, and then we heard that the fight was mid, and so we're very sorry about that. We were not the event organizers, but on the behalf of everyone in America, I'm sorry for that disrespect that was to this grand republic. Nevertheless,
Man, I vote to have most valuable promotions renamed to least valuable promotions at this point.
man, honestly, man, it's like they should name it most dog shit promotions or something like that. Call it the MDSP or something like that.
Yeah, really. Honestly, that's more brutal than mine. But I mean, I agree.
Man, I'm telling you what. But still, let's go out here to where this happened, to where this went down, Matthew.
Arlington, Texas.
Say what?
It happened in Arlington, Texas.
Arlington, Texas. Let's see here. There it is, Arlington, and let's see where that stadium is. There it is, the AT&T Stadium right here. There it is. That's where it happened. This was the stadium, and they had the little ring right down there in the center of the field. And then they went to trying to, well, I wouldn't say they were trying to beat each other's asses. I think they were just trying to tap them a little bit here and there, like a little playful kind of a tap, just for fun.
Oh, breaking news, folks. Breaking news. We just got confirmation here in this massive piece of breaking news that apparently Jake Paul is going to dig up Muhammad Ali and fight him for the belt in his condition. Oh, my God. It's terrible
Oh,
news.
no way.
Terrible.
Dude, I cannot believe it. Bro, does he have like the necromancer out there right now bringing him back from the dead?
I mean, he's gonna be very pale, but he's gonna fight him.
Dude, he's gonna dig him up and he's gonna put him out there at the weigh-in, and they're gonna be like, he's too light to fight. And then Jake Paul will say something like, that guy's nothing more than a bag of bones, and then do the stupid like neck cut thing, and then the hush, like the shush sign on his mouth again or something like that. I'll be honest with you, man. I think you could give him a run for his money. Maybe you ought to challenge him.
What, challenge who?
Challenge Jake Paul.
Oh no, man! I'm saying this. I'm no pro boxer. Like, I don't like Jake Paul, but he probably could beat my ass up because he's actually been training for boxing, so he probably could. I'm not giving nobody a run for their money in the boxing league. I'm afraid not.
Man,
now if you put me with the hot dog man though, like that's one I might actually be able to take. I put the hot dog man and me in a ring. We can do that. Wasn't he yapping before about let's go and fight in a ring or something like that?
Man,
like, where's he at with that? Is he still out there with that?
Didn't he say that he'd fight both of us and he'd beat me down easily, but you'd last longer, like it's the damn movie The Gladiator or something like that? Didn't he say that at some point? Maybe we got to follow through on that one. He has to fight both of us though. I go up first, and if he's not knocked out in that fight for some reason, then he goes up against you.
Yeah, maybe so. Also, I see some people saying that apparently Jake Paul bet on himself. That's why I'd heard as well. I think he bet his whole $40 million on himself. So I don't know how much he made from that bet, but I'd imagine he made a good hefty sum on top of it as well.
Dude, he made a killing, but like he actually did bet that. But that may have all just been hype as well, you never know. Especially with the Paul brothers, you never know. It could have been the case that he actually bet on Tyson instead or something like that. You never know. But still, let's see here. I see some people talking about it. Let's see, Jake Paul should. Well, I don't know. I feel like he would be underpowered in that league. Let's see here. Another breaking news: Jake Paul beats another person 30 years older than him. Yeah, why doesn't he actually fight in real boxing? Why in the world is it always just some kind of like a fake fight? Like I would like to see him actually fight, because something I actually think is the case, Matthew. He doesn't fight real fights because he doesn't want to get the neurological damage from actually getting obliterated in a boxing ring by a real boxer. I think that's the actual truth, and so that's
probably
why
the truth.
Yeah, so that's why
I think that one boxer that he did fight that was actually his age. I can't remember. Let's see here. Jake Paul boxing losses. Let's see what the guy's name was, because he got beat bad. Let's see here. Let's see. His loss came via a split decision to Tommy Fury in 2023. So, yeah, I think it was Tommy Fury that really beat his ass bad. Let's see here. And I think it is. I can't find too much information that quick on it, but I think it was Tommy Fury that really got him. But when he fights old people, he does pretty good.
Yeah, it's like that's just ridiculous. It's goofy. Someone said that sounds smart, not gonna lie. It kind of is smart, especially if you're cashing in at $40 million a fight at this point doing that. But still, it's like you can't go around like with all this bravado and mouth that this guy has, knowing that that's the case. It's like that just seems well, it's not just seeming disingenuous. It is disingenuous at that point. So Let's see. Also, Eric Anderson said, end up like Tyson, basically out of your mind. I'm going to say this in boxing's defense. I think Tyson was out of his mind before he got punched a bit. But, that's just my opinion. Like, that's just me. Like,
I bet you wouldn't tell him that to his face.
hell no, man. I don't want to die. Like, I don't want to die, man. But, like, if you ever listened to him back in the day when he used to be, not, like, before he started getting beat in the fights, like, you would listen to him and he'd be like, listen, I don't talk to women. Don't talk to me out of turn. I don't talk to women unless so you better be quiet and sit down. And he was like that. Like, I think he was just like that. And that's why people were freaked out to fight him, because he was crazy. And then not only that, he actually would beat your ass. So, like, it was terrifying to go up against the guy. And so, like, that's what
let's see. Ms. Disa said that Steven Seagal versus Jake Paul. Honestly, who's my money going to be on? As much as I don't like Jake Paul, my money's going to be on him.
Yeah.
I think Steven Seagal would actually get beat by Jake Paul because Steven Seagal is out of his mind and he's pulling off those mind bender tricks, which really don't actually work in reality unless you have a bunch of actors around you that are acting along what you're doing. I think he would get beat.
Maybe so. And also, Eric Anderson said he wouldn't hit you. He'd be smart enough to know you ain't worth it. Dang, you're just gonna put me down like that, Eric Anderson? I know that Mike Tyson probably wouldn't even. No, Eric Anderson, what the hell, man? Like, you just gonna come down on us like that? Damn. Like, I know I'm not.
You haven't seen the video of Mike Tyson beating that guy on the plane. Apparently, that guy who was drunk on the plane that kept tapping him on the shoulder or something. Mike Tyson turned around and just beat his ass right on the plane.
Man, he said, you about to see the pigeons. Like, it's about to see the pigeons of your grave site. And then just started beating the guy. Yeah, he would beat you. Like, if you piss him off enough, he would beat you. And also, like, the guy might be old, yes, and he may not be a great fighter anymore, but I would promise you that punch is still very strong. Probably a lot stronger than most other people's punches. So I wouldn't be saying anything in front of him. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and with that, we're now moving on to our Super Chat questions. We're fresh out of polls, so we have none of those to address left in the stream, that is. So we're moving into our first Super Chat here, which goes to Duncan VR, who puts in a $28 donation. And thank you very much, Duncan, as always, for the support all the way from Australia, and we appreciate it very much. And Duncan says, Bamuba, riddle me this, Baba. Riddle me that, Muma, why do the Russians keep driving, when they know they're in a minefield? Really one gets hit in front of Tony keeps driving. Oh man, the stupidity, like Flyman. Oh man, I'm telling you.
And I gotta answer that question as in they're told to go, and if they don't go, they get punished. So if for them, it's either get put in a pit, get shot, or get blown up. So out of all those options, they run with the idea of hopefully they just don't get blown up. Maybe there's a chance that they're not going to run over a mine, but they usually always end up running over mines. So I hope that answers the question underlying the animal noises, Duncan VR. But I gotta also thank you so much for throwing in the amazing super chats with the animal noises. It makes every single night an LSA night when you do that, Duncan VR. And I gotta thank you so much once again, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing a reality, and we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, I just had a pretty good idea for a YouTube channel out there. I don't have the animation skills to pull this off, but if someone made a YouTube channel out there, and this is a free idea for the taking, it's probably not worth it, but here's a free idea for the taking. Someone could animate animated boxing cartoons on YouTube and make them sort of cartoonish and caricatures of the people as well. Like, for example, I have Jake Paul fighting, that one fellow that, oh, God, come on, man, I'll take my shot at the barn, you know what I mean?
Oh,
and
no.
Having, fighting him in the animation series and stuff. That would be hilarious.
Man, no, man, just sit there and just in the middle of the fight, just have, come on, man, just as we drew it up. And then Jake Paul goes, what? And then his eyes just turn red and obliterate Jake Paul or something like that. It's that would be pretty funny. I can't animate, though.
Jack, you know you don't want to smoke.
Nah, he would sit there and go, my legs, they turn blonde in the sun. You want to see the sun? And then just smack him through the roof or something, where he goes blasting through the roof into the broad daylight outside or something. You could come up with a whole bunch of funny stuff. Maybe, better yet, Matthew, you could have a fight. Let me think of one that would be funny. Oh, let's see here. I know. Have Peanut the squirrel fight Harambe, and Peanut just slams Harambe on the head, and he turns into an accordion. He squish. What?
That's not going to be sanctioned, that fight right there. I'm not sanctioning that fight.
Why not?
Long live Peanut.
Long live Peanut.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace, little Peanut. Poor little thing. Just got it just unfortunate what happened to that squirrel. Very unfortunate. Everyone was pissed off in the country about the loss of Peanut. May Peanut rest in peace. But with that, I hope that does address that well. Duncan VR, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Somebody said, Scott said Jake Paul versus the IRS. Oh my God. I don't know what that's about. I'm going to declare ignorance. But anyways, moving on here to our next one. This one goes to Jocelyn White, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Josh, for that support. And I hope you're doing well also. It's good to see you once again. And Josh says, thanks for keeping it real. Take one from the chat and LLT, LSA.
Thank you so much for the support, Jocelyn White. And thank you for enjoying this channel and enjoying us keeping it real. We love to keep the thing real. If it wasn't real, it wouldn't be an Enforcer show. We just try our hardest here. And oh no, I just saw someone say something else about Jake Paul. But we're going to get to that here in a second. Let me on that. I gotta thank you so much once again for the support, Jocelyn White, and helping this channel to keep on running. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die. And thank you for sticking around. I hope that you've been doing well these days too. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And also, Matthew, someone said something about Jake Paul and his relations with folks who may no longer be around. That was actually Logan Paul, I believe, if I'm correct. That was his YouTube channel that did that, where they went into the woods and he said, I think I see someone there. And then that was put on YouTube and nothing happened to him. You know, like, you know, that's just so weird to me, you know, like how nothing happened because of that, you know. I was like, that's just interesting, you know, because I feel like if we did something like that, we'd probably be gone in about a day, but he can do it and he's still around. I'm like, how does that work specifically? And how does he still have a following after doing something like that? Like they, like the
well, when your audience is primarily teenagers and children, they don't really have much of a reality like in their heads of what's supposed to be happening, what's not supposed to be happening. So when you have young children, they're real easy to forgive things like that because they're not really experienced in life yet to realize how bad it was what he did. So they just keep coming back, and the parents are like, well, I guess he's fine. Like he apologized. He did one of those like classic YouTube apologies. He's good to go.
Man, but nothing will beat that ukulele on the apology videos. Nothing will beat the ukulele. Have you seen that one, Matthew?
I haven't.
Oh man, you need to pull that one up and do some homework after the stream, man. That one was funny as hell. So I can't even get into what happened with it, but of course it's like the usual YouTube drama, you know, like someone is having interesting talks with people who aren't really appropriate to have those kinds of talks with, if you understand what I'm saying. So that YouTuber came out, man, and did an apology video where they sat down in front of the camera and made a song about it. And like with the ukulele and everything, it was crazy, man. You just got to go pull it up. You'll find it. You'll find it. But it is crazy. And then they plugged, I think, merch in the video, if I remember right. It was like the craziest thing ever. But yeah, that was YouTube apology videos or something. And you know, you don't really see a lot of them anymore, to be entirely honest. People just kind of disappear off the face of the earth. But with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well. And we are on to the next one. But a huge thanks to you once again, Josh and White, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running.
Yes, indeed. And our next super chat here goes to Hockey, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Hockey, for that $20 support. And we appreciate it very much. And also, I was just doing some checking here. Let me do a little bit of checking. This is actually Hockey was the one who has the picture of a corgi as their profile picture. I was just going back to look here. That is indeed a corgi right there. I love to see it. And also, Hockey, thank you very much for that support. They say, keep up the great work, you guys.
And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Hockey. And thank you for having that beautiful corgi as your profile picture. Today, Mr. Corgi got a little cranky. Mr. Corgi's kind of been getting a little cranky lately. I picked him up for too long and he didn't like it. So he turned around and then he took a nibble on my leg, little baby. He's a sweet little baby, but nowadays he kind of gets a little nippy sometimes. But beyond that, we love Mosuba work and we love the little baby Shiba. To be honest with y'all though, Mr. Wargi has gotten a little bit more nippy and a little bit more cranky since he's been neutered. So I think it's done a little bit with his hormones where he's not really the same because he doesn't have the same, you know, kind of like a chemical balance, I guess you could call it. But sweet little thing. He's still a little baby and he's a precious little thing. But beyond that, I thank you so much for the support, Hockey, and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep it running. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to R.A. That Girl Chicago, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, That Girl Chicago, for that support. And also, I believe that's your first time ever supporting the channel, and huge shout out for that as well. We appreciate it. And they said, why doesn't America consider cyber attacks acts of war? I've been wondering this for a long time.
That's a great question. Cyber attacks generally are not considered an act of war because usually the cyber attacks are very limited in scope and easy to fix, and so the damage isn't really that severe. It's not really destroying anything strategically, usually in the way that they're conducted. And also, for some reason, while cyberspace is one of the most important realms in the modern post-industrial age, it's still not considered that important to actually create a war over, which is fairly interesting, because if you saw that the Chinese came over to America and they blew up a power plant or sabotaged it to where it went offline, that probably would be considered an act of war. But for some reason, when you take down multiple vital facilities on the internet, which are necessary for modern functioning of this republic, for some reason that's not considered an act of war. I just guess it's that there's a lack of importance put on it, and not only that, usually the damage is limited in scale and fairly easily, fairly fixable. It doesn't kill anyone, it doesn't harm anyone, so once again it kind of also falls under that no harm, no foul kind of a mindset, which I think is honestly goofy, and it's usually fixed within a day. So for that reason, I think that's why cyber attacks really aren't considered acts of war. But that's just my opinion, because I don't really think there's a good answer out there as to why they aren't. Because in my opinion, if there is any kind of an attack on anything, I would consider that it probably would be an act of war, no matter what it was the internet or anything. Because like if a fishing boat can be fired on, and that is almost grounds for war, how come attacking our main financial institutions online and pretty much taking them down isn't an act of war in itself? It doesn't make a lot of sense to me either. So with that, I thank you so much for the support. I thank you for your first support to this channel ever, and helping this channel to keep on running, because you are one of the people who helps us to make this thing possible. And that was not only your first super chat ever, but that was your first great question that you've ever thrown in, because while there isn't really a good clear answer to it, that's still an incredibly good question to ask, and I think that's one that people should be asking a little bit more. So with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving on here to our next super chat. This one goes to Brian Jeffcoat, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, Brian, for that support. He said, "It's not Alabama Wi-Fi. You both don't strike me as tech savvy." Whoa, Jack, hold on a minute. And he says, "I'm in Alabama and pull 300 megabytes all day long." I'm assuming he means download. He said 10 megabyte streams, Netflix, issue free. 30 runs most online games, lag free. And I would guess software/setting issue, not hardware. So, Brian, so here is my deal. I actually am tech savvy. I will say that. I've actually been tech savvy for a very long time. But it's probably the bandwidth here. Like, we are getting actually very good Wi-Fi speeds, like 1,000 download and 1,000 upload. So that is not the problem. I don't really know, honestly, what the deal is with the ISP. I think that is probably where the problem lies, because it's not a problem with the computer. I've checked the RAM usage, I've checked CPU, GPU usage, as well as the disk. The computer, at least my computer, is well within its limits, and it's barely using any of its power whatsoever. So I don't know what's going on with it. I think it is the Wi-Fi, and I don't think it's on the Enforcer's end either. I thought that was maybe the problem as well, but I don't think that is either at this point, because now he's hooked up to Ethernet, and I am as well. So I don't know. But for Enforcer, what's that?
It's the damn Mac.
It's not that Mac, man.
I believe it is.
Can't be.
It has to be.
No.
Yes.
Hell no.
Hell yeah.
All right.
All right, then. Oh, man, it might be Discord. It might be something else. I'm not really sure, because it's not really the Mac. Like, I'm about to see all the Mac hate come in, because I'm kind of starting it here. But I'm actually going to come in defense of the Mac. When Matthew was out in Texas, because he did go there a little while ago, we just didn't mention it on air. When he was out in Texas, he was actually still on the stream, and we were running into no lag issues at all, hardly, with him all the way out in Texas. So I think it is something to do with either the not the Wi-Fi, the internet here, or something along those lines, because when I was in Birmingham and he was in Dallas, there was like no issues at all for those days. Like, I think it was like 2 or 3 days. And then he comes back, and then we start running into issues again. So I don't know, maybe it is just Alabama internet, or maybe it's the proximity of our computers to each other or something along those lines. I don't know, but One thing I do know is that we will continue to pray to the, let's see, what the hell is it called in the Warhammer world? The Omnissiah, and ask for the technology to work properly. We will do the proper rites of computer success. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And I thank you for the support. I thank you for the light shade that you threw, because it was getting kind of warm in here and we do need a little bit of shade. But nevertheless, thank you so much.
Oh, wait a minute. Brian Jeffcoat, he came back in. He said, it is not the Mac. Now, Brian is a very tech-savvy individual. Like, I'll tell you this right now. Brian knows what he's talking about. He's an expert in the field. He said it is not the Mac. And he said, what type of router? And sadly, I can't say that information on the air, because we do have people that want to mess with our network, and they did mess with our network at the old Enforcer HQ because they got our IP address. So I don't want to go into any of the network details like that, because I don't know what information they're looking for to actually get back into our network. So I can't say that on the air, but it is not the Mac. I do agree with you on that one.
And so with that, it appears that you are now a tech expert, according to Matthew. I'm personally not a tech expert at all, but one thing I know is that it's not my computer. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Thank you so much once again for support, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Plazath, who puts in an $11 donation, and thank you very much, Plazath, for that support. Excuse me. He said, for the new people here, can you explain the hot dog and stuff without getting too much into it? And LSA.
And thank you for the support, and yes, I can. I'm going to make it very brief, though, because giving it too much time these days seems silly, because that channel's on the down and out. But basically, long story short, way back in the day, we were just starting on YouTube 3 years ago or so, and we were covering the news of this war. We had been doing it since hour one of the war, and it took a lot of work to get this thing off the ground. What happened is that someone came onto our live chat one day, because our channel intro is very specific to this channel in its design, its appearance, and everything. And also our thumbnails were really specific at the time too. And someone came in and said, hey, some dude is copying your titles and your thumbnails word for word verbatim. And considering that it took us, well, it didn't take us, it actually took me hours, because Matthew hadn't gotten into thumbnails or, for that matter, the intro. Matthew's never been a part of making the intro. I've always been the one who does the intro alone. And Matthew has gotten into making thumbnails, I think, over the past year or so, and has come up with, honestly, our best design so far. But back in the day, all that stuff was really up to me. That was all in my wheelhouse. So I was really aggravated at that, because I went over there and looked, and the hot dog man, as he's known now, was literally just ripping our thumbnails and like our intro, like our actual like musical intro, almost like verbatim, which pissed me off a great deal. So I made a mention, did not mention the name of the channel, but made a mention that that was not nice and they should stop it, because it took a lot of work to make this channel that unique for someone to just come in and swipe the whole aesthetic. And so then the hot dog man went, whoa, I don't get it. He could have just sent me an email. And so then I did send him an email. Well, actually, I didn't send him an email, because I was like, you know, whatever. He gets the point. And so then after that, he then starts making the hit pieces on us, because what we found out is that the typical mode of operation of the hot dog man is that the hot dog man does not like it when people call him out on the scummy stuff he does. And that was fairly scummy to do, because instead of coming up with his own unique stuff, he just decided, considering that we were the biggest stream running at the time and still are, he was just going to copy us verbatim on the intro and thumbnails and hope that he can pretty much just coattail off the success of our streams, because his would look similar. So then he made his first hit piece, and he started talking trash about us for a while. We decided to actually extend an olive branch to him, and we finally emailed him, and we're like, look, maybe there's just some big misunderstanding here. We don't really like that you use our stuff, but, you know, maybe you're a nice person or something. We'll let it go. So then he sent us an email in response, admitted that he actually pretty much copied our thumbnails and intros verbatim, actually did admit it, and then said, yeah, he's going to bury the hatchet. So time passed. The first year anniversary of the war came around. I tried to invite him on, and he would never respond to anything or get in a call with me to talk. And so, and by the way, you'll hear another story about this, and I want to make this very clear, because this is one that he tries to put out to make it sound like, oh, woe is me. He said that his grandmother was dying, and he said that he was having a medical issue, and I told him that's fine, like, you know, take all the time you need, but, you know, eventually we do have to schedule something. So one day he said, Sunday after your stream, I can get on a call. So I said, okay, we'll do that. And I'm still trying to get him on the year's anniversary show. I sit there and I try and call him. It shows on Discord he's playing Black Ops 4 or something like that. I don't know. It was some sort of Call of Duty game. It showed that he was playing it. He didn't get on the call. He didn't respond to any message I made. So at that point, I said, whatever. If he's not that interested in getting on the show, we'll find someone else. So we did find someone else. We filled the slot. And then once we publicly announced that we were going to have a live show with guests, then he could finally find the time to reach out on Discord and try and meet up with me on a call. And at that point, I just ignored him because this was a joke and he was treating this channel like a joke. So then after that, he went straight back into the hit pieces. And then that's when it went hardcore. So the dude started doxing us, having his fans harass us at every single level. They tried to have us swatted when we were at law school. They tried to have people show up to our house. They actually did have a couple of people show up to the house. Like, they would call in pizza deliveries, and they would just show up to the house out of the blue. Like we know that we didn't place them either. They weren't accidentally placed because we don't order Domino's, and they were always Domino's orders. And so we knew that this was them because we had been doxxed, and there's no one that's ordering Domino's for us out of the blue all the time for no reason. So then that was very interesting. And then every once in a while we'd have like a car just sit out of the front of the driveway every once in a while. I think that happened like twice. And so we weren't really sure if someone was just, you know, stalking us at that point or what. So for a while we were living in absolute hell. We tried to, well, really cutting the rest of the story short, we tried to stop the guy, and then everyone, well, not everyone, but some of the people that are in this sort of a specific sphere decided to join him, not knowing anything of what had gone on. And then later on, they all found out that he's crazy and insane, and they literally did, well, he literally did the exact same thing he did to us, to all of those people, and now they have nothing to do with him. So the guy is a really sick piece of crap, to really cut it down to kind of like a short and simple sort of a thing. We don't like him at all, and the guy is adamant he's never going to stop talking about us, so we just constantly riff on the guy. We don't ever name him because that's what he's looking for. He's kind of wanting to rage bait and get publicity off of rage baiting, so we just call him the hot dog man and never mention him by name. But the dude is absolutely a piece of garbage. I honestly don't know why YouTube hasn't done anything to him, because he has violated multiple parts of the terms of service, but they still haven't done anything to him. So we just, you know, joke around about him, and that's that. That was a lot longer than it was supposed to be, but I hope that does address the story fairly well and give an idea of who the hot dog man is. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least with the story that I put out so far. It was supposed to be short. It ended up being a little bit longer, but still, thank you so much once again for support. And I hope that does answer your question fairly well. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so after that little hot dog rant there, we're moving on to our next one, which goes to Matthew Morris, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Matthew, for that support. That is your first ever super chat on this live stream, the first one from Australia, and huge shout out to you for that very generous support. We appreciate it. He said, I love you guys and your work. And this time last year, I was in Lviv as a volunteer, and you guys helped so much you don't even realize it, and have a drink on me.
And thank you so much for the support, and thank you for the really kind words, Matthew. Thank you. That was very kind of you. And I gotta say that that is a wonderful thing to hear, that you have been enjoying this channel massively and find that it is actually a pretty decent service at that to be running around here, Matthew Morris, your first super chat ever. And also, really cool to hear that you were a volunteer in Lviv. There are loads of volunteers that are always working in Ukraine, and a lot of y'all are the unsung heroes and really the backbone of foreign support to Ukraine, at least down there on the ground. Y'all aren't walking around with cameras hopping from bar to bar trying to make yourself look like a hero. Y'all are the real heroes that actually get stuff done down there. And I got to thank you, Matthew Morris, for being one of the folks that have quietly worked in the background as a volunteer down there on the ground and actually helps to make sure that Ukrainian independence and Western American interests are assured every single day. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, Matthew Morris. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And we will have a drink on you. Not an alcoholic drink. We don't really drink. But I will make sure to have a delicious, incredibly tasty, sweet tea on you. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, Matthew Morris. I hope that addressed that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to Bob T, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you, Bob, as well for that support. And they did not put in a comment, but thank you very much for that support indeed, Bob, and we appreciate it. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank you so much for the support, Bob, and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, Bob T from the United Kingdom, throwing in your first super chat ever, according to YouTube, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. The United Kingdom is a very interesting and a very beautiful place. It is full of different kinds of charms and wonderful magic. It's a incredible, beautiful place. Have y'all ever been to the United Kingdom? Are you from the United Kingdom? Well, then you would know what I'm saying is true. Look at this, the North Wessex Downs National Park, or really an area of natural beauty. It's gorgeous out here. Look, they have the little pics on the side of the mountain of the horse, and they also have the nice castles as well. It's a beautiful place. It truly is.
Blenheim.
That is not Blenheim. that is another place.
Blenheim.
Man, you're like, Blenheim. I was like, I don't know about that. Like, look, they have a pub called the Red Lion. Every place has a pub called the Red Lion. And this woman right here, she's smiling very bigly. But beyond that, this place is beautiful. Not only that, the entirety of the United Kingdom is beautiful. From top to bottom, it's truly a varied island. Like, for example, check this place out. Snowdonia, or as it's called, the Erie National Park. That's most likely Welsh for Snowdonia. Unfortunately, I don't know Welsh that well, but it is gorgeous out there. Beautiful, I'd say. Beautiful, even. And we actually went over there a couple of times. Well, actually twice. One time in 2018 and one time in 2019. And saw the place, and it was beautiful. I would highly recommend if you ever go anywhere in the world, go to the United Kingdom and check it out. You will not be sorry. It's a great vacation place. Very interesting and a very varied history and a culture. Also, there's the Dungeness Nature Reserve, which technically is the only desert in Europe. Did you know that, Matthew?
The only desert in Europe, eh? It doesn't look like much of a desert to me.
Well, it's technically some sort of a desert, I believe, because I was told that by somebody. It's also one of the smallest as well. And also, another cool thing, Matthew, is that the Romney Heights and Dymchurch Railway runs through this area, which is considered to be a form of public transportation.
That looks like a very small train.
It is very small. I'm glad that you can see with your eyes. I'm just kidding. Let me actually go show you this thing, because it's really cool. Let's see here. Where is it? Because they have stations dotted all along the coast. And I'm not seeing it. I'll be dipped. Let's see. So, it's Romney Heights and Dymchurch. So, let's go up here. And I should be able to find it somewhere up here. So, let's see here. Where is it? It's created by some guy in the 1920s. And he was just a big fan of the British mainline railroad, so he built a small one along the whole length of the coast down here. But I can't find the station. Let me just type in the Romney Heights and Dymchurch Railway. Let's see, Heights and Dymchurch Railway. So there we go, and there it is.
Romney.
It's not that Romney. it's not that one. But here we go. It is a tiny little railway. You can actually ride these trains. No joke. They actually are a form of public transport in the area. The line spans for about 30 miles. And for scale speed, these things actually do get up to a speed of about 100 miles per hour for their scale. But in real life, that means that they're going about 35 miles an hour. It's a really cool novelty, and I believe it runs pretty frequently, even still, because it's a pretty big attraction. But there's a kid for scale. That's how big these trains are. They're incredibly small. Like, they're wildly small.
Pretty neat. I don't know about it being public transport, but it's pretty neat.
It is unverifiably public transport. You would think that I'm lying on that. It is actually considered that, which is a weird thing about it. But still, I like them because it's just so freaking small. I mean, like, look at that. That looks bizarre. It looks like some freakish sort of an abomination, really. But
why does that guy that driving the train look like somebody I've seen before a lot on the TV? You see any similarities with that guy's face?
Hello, my friends. Oh, dude, no way. Dude, he's got a new job.
No, not that guy. I was more thinking about, Mr. Appalachia.
Oh, born in the Appalachian Mountains, but he's actually from, like, Western Ohio. Yeah, that guy. Yeah, that guy. Yeah.
Close right there. I think his name might be Mitt.
Oh, no. No. But also, here's what the inside of the coaches look like. Very comfy, very luxurious.
I don't know about that. It looks like the interior of a school bus.
Yeah, it does. It does, doesn't it? But still, it's really cool. Like, I think it's neat. And also, I see a lot of people saying that railway was used in World War II with armor on it. That is true, Sax 2. They actually did have an armored train on the Romney Heights and Dymchurch. Let me see if I can find that. Romney Heights and Dymchurch. World War II. And let me see if I can find a picture here. Y'all are not going to believe it when I show this to y'all. Oh, yeah, here it was. Dude, this is sick. This is legitimately sick. The train was run by the British Army, and it was legitimately a small armored train. They mounted machine guns on this thing, and it would run anti-aircraft services up and down the coast in this area.
Crazy, man. I like that. A little mobile air defense, something like that.
Yeah, look at that, man. You're just running around on your model train, gunning down Germans. It's a great day in Britain.
Gunning down the German planes, that is.
Well, yeah, gunning down the German planes, of course, but, you know, still, it's a really cool railway. I mean, it's just neat. What more can be said about it? I think it's cool, like 100%. Like, don't y'all think it's cool? I think it's cool. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here is going to go to Michael McMahon, who puts in a $10 donation, and thank you very much, Michael, for that support as well. And he says, do you think that the military will have enough Putin and the FSB's BS and show their loyalty to their commanders and return to Russia to start a coup d'etat, removing Putin and his allies?
I think it's fairly unlikely. It's a neat idea, but I genuinely think it's fairly unlikely in real-life conditions because there is really no way for these commanders to usually coordinate without it being found out and then them being purged. So I would generally believe that that's probably not going to be happening because most officers would be too scared to step out of line and possibly have their head roll on the chopping block or be thrown out of a window. So I would generally assume that those kinds of conditions would never prevail under the current circumstances, in my analysis at least. And so thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running and making this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and also I'm beginning to wonder now if Discord's the one having the problem. Is it won't let me send any messages either, so that's kind of weird.
Oh.
But anyways, moving on here to our next one. This one goes to Astesian, who puts in a $5 donation, and thank you very much for the support. He says, "Geschlick liken and Deutsche Mulch."
Geschlick Beleidigungen in den deutschen Volk. But beyond that, I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running as Techium. And of course, it is wonderful to know that you threw that in. And of course, thank you so much once again for allowing me to do that impersonation. I haven't done that one in a hot minute. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Mr. Lobotomy, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you very much, Mr. Lobotomy, for that support. He said, man, Russia is turning out to be such a letdown as we consider them a near peer adversary. And they can't even function at all. And we would bully them.
We would bully them quite tremendously, Mr. Lobotomy. We would lobotomize them, pun intended. But beyond that, yes, the Russians are not a near-peer adversary anymore. The United States delisted them as a near-peer adversary. They are now a regional threat, which means that they are not at all what they used to be. Another interesting thing that I would like to remind everyone about, quite jubiously, is that the Chinese are the only near-peer threat that we see in the world right now, and that's only regional as well, but they are expanding their abilities to possibly be a global near-peer threat. So with that, I hope that does address that quite well, because we would give them a right proper thrashing, at least conventionally, that is. And so thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
I think the lag actually might be Discord, because I can't even send any messages right now anywhere on Discord. It keeps popping up red everywhere. I just don't know, folks. When you have so much stuff going wrong at the same time, it's hard to like narrow down the problem to what exactly it is, because my computer is only using 19 gigabytes of RAM right now, and it has about 50 gigabytes in its queue. Also, let's see, CPU. I've got 84% of my CPU idle. For energy, barely using anything. Disk, it's barely writing anything. Network, it looks like it's doing quite a bit, receiving and also transmitting. But my computer is well within its limits, so maybe it is Discord. I don't know. But anyways, moving on here to our next one. This one goes to Astesian once again, who puts in a 5 and says, "You have sinned against the great arch-voodoo. I'm going to show you."
But still, thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Go ahead, call the law, damn it, or something like that. But still, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope that does address that fairly well as Techian. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Quantum Fighter, who puts in a 5 and says, "Can we look at this Apennine Colossus? And you can go inside it, and his eyes will light up from the fires, and smoke comes out of his mouth. Architectures."
And let me see here. Let me go see how that's spelled in the super chat, so that way I can go and pull this thing up. The Apennine Colossus. Let's see. Apennine Colossus. It's a Colossus cherry. But let's see here. Here we go. This thing is quite interesting indeed. Let me go get it on Wikipedia. And it is in Italy. It was completed in the late 1580s. So here it is right here. This is the Apennine Colossus. This thing right here.
That's architecture?
It's sculpture really to me, but maybe it is architecture. Let's see. It's a stone statue, so it is a sculpture. About 11 meters high, so about 35 feet tall. In the estate of Ville Dimidov in Vaglia, Tuscany in Italy. And let's see, it's a personification of the Apennine mountain ranges in the late 1580s. It was constructed on the grounds of the villa. It fell into disrepair and was replaced by another villa in the 1800s. But nevertheless, this statue has been here for some time, at least this one right here. And you can kind of see the resemblance to the mountains of the distance when you look at the personification of this thing. Very, very deep artwork. This is the kind of artwork I appreciate because it requires a lot of work to be able to sculpt a man-sized figure that's about 35 feet tall and also try and make it look a bit like the Apennine Mountains. So that's fairly interesting. I thank you so much for sharing that, Quantum Fighter, because I personally don't know a lot about the statue. To be honest, this is the first time I've actually ever heard about it, but it is a very interesting one to see for sure. And also, you can go in this thing, which would be interesting, and it will, eyes will light up from fires and smoke comes out of its mouth. That is interesting. I don't, let's see if it mentions anything about that here. Let's see. Exists a cave. Let's see here. A neurologist is a chamber big enough for a small orchestra, and to hold a fireplace, which smoke would escape through the nostrils. The chamber in the head had slits in the ears and the eyes. So this thing is actually hollow, interestingly enough. That is wild, actually. That is incredibly cool to hear that it is. So with that, I thank you so much for sharing this interesting fact right there, Quantum Fighter, and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we would not be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't know such a cool fact right now about this statue. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving on here to our next one. This one goes to Quantum Fighter once again. He puts in a 5. Says, can we look at the Aachen Cathedral in Old Town? I'm thinking of going there for Christmas architecture. Live chat question, please. You're doing great work in LLC.
And Matthew, it is not Aachen, it is Aachen, the ancient city of Aachen. Do you know where Aachen is, Matthew? Do you know where it is?
Yes, it's in Germany.
Yes, and it's right along the there it is, the Belgian-German border right here. There it is, Aachen. Aachen is actually a city that was famous in World War II because many Americans considered it to be the Stalingrad of the Western Front. It was really where the Germans put up their stiffest resistance out of any area in the entirety of Western Europe, and it was a very interesting battle for that reason because the army actually brought in the coastal artillery, which was operating pretty much just conventional artillery at that point, but heavy conventional artillery, and had them blasting holes through buildings in the middle of the city with the large caliber artillery pieces. Pretty interesting story, but beyond that, downtown Aachen was actually technically completely destroyed during the war, and most of it was rebuilt. Even the Aachen Cathedral was largely damaged through the course of the fighting and was restored afterwards, but it actually was restored pretty much to its original condition, and it was a very impressive cathedral before the war and after the war. They even had the stained glass remade and installed back into the cathedral, which is a very expensive process, but very cool to see that they actually restored this cathedral back to its original glory that it was before the Battle of Aachen, before it pretty much was damaged to an extreme degree. But it's a beautiful building. It's an incredible one, and I would highly suggest if anyone is in the area to go check it out because it really is a work of beauty of this cathedral is. But beyond that, downtown Aachen is a generally interesting place as well. We can actually show y'all some of it. And here is the Aachen Rathaus, which is kind of like their version of a city hall in Germany. A lot of people are like, are there rats in the rat house? Yes, but there's also government officials, so I guess you could say that they're almost one and the same. But beyond that, this is the rat house. But you can also see that not really a lot of the old Aachen really does exist. Like, look at this city square here. This is a new building, probably from the 1950s or 60s. These are new buildings, probably from the 1950s and 60s as well. This one's from the 70s, most likely. That one back there is certainly from maybe the 70s or the 80s. The only thing that actually is original in this town is the Aachen Cathedral, at least over there. And if we were to drop down on really any other street, you can also see that that's largely going to be the case. These buildings, once again, built during the time of West Germany. This building may actually be an original survivor, along with the one just down to it on the right, and also a couple of more of these buildings. But most of the buildings within Aachen were entirely destroyed over the course of the fighting during the Battle of Aachen. Not really before, not really after, just during the battle. The battle was that devastating to the city. So I hope that does address that fairly well, at least on that end. I would highly recommend visiting it, though, because it is a very interesting city, and it is cool. But if you want to see, I guess if you wanted to see a more impressive cathedral, one that's more famous as well, you could always go check out the Cologne Cathedral, which I believe that one of the routes from Cologne actually goes to Aachen. So you could drop into Aachen, take a look around, and then go out to Aachen. Well, actually, you could drop into Cologne, take a look around, and then go out to Aachen. You could do it that way or the other. And so that would be a pretty interesting idea. And also, I heard that there's a really big Christmas market in Cologne. So if you were big into Christmas markets, you could go there and take a look at it, because I'm sure that would be incredibly fun. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running and allowing us to talk a little bit more about interesting architecture. And so thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving on here to our next one, as I confirm that Discord is indeed having problems tonight, and it is a Discord issue, because Down Detective says they are having some issues right now, so I'm shocked that our voice call is still working, but thankfully it is still working. So, moving on here to our next super chat, this one goes to Dean London, who throws in a very generous $20 donation, and thank you very much, Dean London, for that support, and being a longtime channel legend as well. They said, send chat to LSA.
And thank you so much for the support, Dean London, one of our longtime British viewers of this stream. And I thank you incredibly for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running right now. And so, thank you so much once again for the support. Thank you for being a part of the British contingent of the Lee Spring Army. And Matthew, what do we got from the live chat?
So the live chat from Dean London is going to go to David Kotke, who said, any more on the North Korean troops recently?
We haven't heard much on them. It appears that they've either just completely kind of faded into the fighting in the Kursk Oblast, and so they're not really anything of note, or they're still being trained and they haven't even made it into Kursk yet. We're still getting kind of conflicting reports on where exactly they are. Some people are saying that they're fighting in Kursk. Some people are saying that they're still being trained in Voronezh. We're not really sure which is true, but I have a feeling that they're just kind of going into obscurity at this point. Either they've been involved in the fighting for a while, or they're training still, and so the story's kind of faded out until that changes. One way or the other, they're just not really being mentioned a lot at this point, and it's one of those two stories that is the truth. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and thank you so much once again for sponsoring that live chat, Dean London, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And moving on here to our next super chat question. This one's going to go to Ambi Pambi, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you very much, Ambi Pambi, for that support. It's much appreciated, and we appreciate it, of course, here on the channel. Ambi Pambi says, Paul Anderson wishes he could give more, so please add this to his.
And I thank you so much for the support, Ambi Pambi. And any support is great support. We're just happy to see people supporting it. If folks sometimes say, I wish I could give more, anything is incredible. We don't even expect to get anything in the first place. So if it's just $1, that is more than enough to us and absolutely incredible. And so thank you so much for the support, Ambi Pambi. And we will throw that towards that super chat. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And speaking of marvelous blunders, we've missed the live chat question, was sponsored by Quantum Fighter. God. Stay with that. We're going to go scroll up to the live chat segment and get one for Quantum Fighter. He said, no biggie. Thank you very much for the forgiveness, good sir. This one goes to Captain Obvious. Wow. He said, why isn't South Korea doing more to help Ukraine in terms of military equipment?
Well, shouldn't you know, Captain Obvious? I'm just kidding. I'm playing with
wow.
you. I'm pulling his chain. But beyond that, they don't really have to do anything. No country is obligated to help Ukraine. I really don't like it when when it's kind of asked that way. Like that, I'm not like admonishing you or anything here. I just don't like when it's asked like that, because the truth is that while supporting Ukraine is in Western interests, no one is forced to help Ukraine. Like, just like when you drive down the street, you don't have to give $20 to the guy sitting on the side of the street. Like, you can do things out of the kindness of your heart, and that's it. Or you could do it for your own interest, or maybe you're not interested in that too much and you just leave it alone. I don't really like when it kind of goes down that route. South Korea doesn't have to do anything to support Ukraine. They are literally on the opposite side of the world from Ukraine. They may as well be on another planet as far as South Korea is concerned, but they are trying to support them a little bit. I don't think the South Koreans should do more or less. Whatever they're comfortable with is fine, because it's nowhere close to even being their problem. They have massive problems as it is dealing with the North Koreans, and so in my opinion, I think they're doing just fine as it is. I also have to say that that's something that generally, like that kind of a line of thinking, like with a question like that, or at least trying to word a question like that, it generally makes people less apt to support Ukraine, because if you make something that's voluntary sound like you have to do it, people are not going to do it just out of spite. Like here in America, instead of saying, America must do more for Ukraine, it is a requirement, and we're going to do everything we can, regardless of whether people want to or not, screw those people. It's going to make people generally not that big of a fan of supporting Ukraine, that we're down the middle, because now people are being a little bit too vehement about it. It's one thing to be pro-Ukrainian, it's another thing to be so zealous about it that you end up damaging the cause. And a lot of people end up doing that these days, because they get a little too overzealous with it. Like, America should support Ukraine, but we don't have to. No one has to. It's something that we're doing because we believe it's in our interest and we think it's the right thing to do. And that's the way it should be marketed to other people, especially everyone in the Western world, because there doesn't need to be this thing of like trying to force or compel people to do something or make it sound like we have to do something. You could literally sit back and do nothing. May not be in your best interests, but still you have the ability to do that, or the nation has the ability to choose that. And so that's my kind of a take on that. So as far as the South Koreans are concerned, they're doing no less or no more than what they need to do. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And with that, we are moving on to our next super chat question. And currently, there's a poll running. It's running right now. It just got put away. Put up, not put away. And it looks like 45% said they want the posh British accent. Cheshire. And it looks like 21% said they want, whoa, Jack, look, Jack. So we're going to start off with the posh accent, if I can try to get it together. But anyways, this one goes to Eternal Core, who puts in a $5 donation. Thank you very much, Eternal Core, for that support. They said, Enforcer Matt, the lag is because you're using an Apple computer, PC. That's, I don't know if I can repeat this. It scares me a bit. I think YouTube might not like it. But thank you very much for the support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I thank you so much for the support. I'm going to have to, go with Matthew on this one. I'm not sure if it can be addressed or not. But I still thank you so much for the support, Eternal Core, and helping this channel to keep on running, because it's folks like you who help to make this thing possible. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
Oh, Jack, whoa, Gunfox61 puts in a 5, Jack, whoa, I mean, come on, man, Gunfox, thank you, whoa, and he says September 15th, 1950, look, the great CB, train robbery of 1950, blame Matt for this one also, whoa, Jack, question from the chat.
Whoa, Jack, whoa, let's see here, the great CB, let's see here. Train robbery. Train robbery. So let's take a look at this. Not now. The Veterans Breakfast Club. Hang on here. Hang on, folks. So hang on, this is an interesting one here. I haven't heard about this one before. After the landing at Incheon, South Korea on September 15th of 1950, a patrol of 10 Seabees volunteered to go behind enemy lines and commandeer several locomotives located at the Kurim Brewery. The Seabees captured 8 locomotives and began racing back to American lines, but not before they threw aboard cases of Kirin beer and sake. And so, dang, dude, that's wild. They were like, all right, we need 10 guys to go steal the trains, or the locomotives more so. Who's going to do it? And they were like, we will. And they were like, what's the prize? And they were like, you're stealing them from a brewery. And they were like, it's wicked. And then they went and just did it and succeeded. That is actually, I think, the only story I now have ever heard of anyone stealing a train in the middle of the war, except for the train stealing that happened in the Confederacy during the Civil War, that actually happened. Because that is wild. And also, Incheon is right there, right west of Seoul. Like, that's where they landed. That's where they stole the trains from. Oh, the locomotives, specifically, not the trains. The trains are the locomotive and the consist coupled together. The locomotives are just the engine. So, thank you for sharing that. I have never heard that story before, and that is incredibly cool. And once again, another credit to the U.S. Navy Seabees. They can get her done. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to none other than Scott, who puts in a $5 donation, and thank you very much, Scott, for that support. He said, every champion was once a contender who refused to give up, said Rocky Balboa. And did you guys hear about Russians impersonating Ukrainians in Kupiansk?
I did hear about that, Scott. We haven't been able to get video and picture evidence of it, though, so we're not entirely sure if that is verified or not. That's why we haven't reported on it. But still, let me read that in the proper voice, though, Scott, because it's Rocky Balboa, which is Sylvester Stallone. Every champion was once a contender who refused to give up. Don't ask me to stop being a man, or something like that, but still, thank you for the support. Wait, hang on. No, Matthew, let me do it. What do you have to say, Rocky? Say it. Something like that. But beyond that, thank you so much for the support and help the channel to keep on running. And also, I would have to say, I have heard about that. Once again, we don't have any verification of that. So for now, we aren't covering it until we can get some proof. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one here is going to go to Dean London once again, who puts in a 2, and thank you very much, good sir, for that support. Dean London, that is. Give it to the chat, boys. I'll take a Frankfurter over, whoa, what is that? I don't know this term. It sounds derogatory. What is this term, Enforcer? Tell me more.
I don't know. It's British, though, but I don't know what it means. I don't know what it means, man. But still, thank you for the support, Dean London, and we will take one from the live chat on you, Dean London. Thank you so much once again for support. And with that, Matthew, what do we got?
And this one goes to Chris Chastain, who says, didn't Georgia try to join NATO?
I don't know if they did or let me go check.
I think they wouldn't let them in because Atlanta's at war, and you can't join NATO while at war.
Ooh.
Oh, Jack, whoa!
Oh, let's see. Oh, yeah, look at that. On the 5th of January of 2008, Georgia held a non-binding referendum on NATO membership with 77% voting in favor of joining NATO. Russia sees NATO's eastward expansion as a threat against their strategic interest in Europe and has accused the West of having double standards. And so, yes, they actually did try to join NATO back in 2008. And you know what's crazy? They went to war with Georgia just a little while after, in the same year. Crazy, right? It's like every time anyone tries to join NATO because they're scared of the Russians give everyone a reason to be scared of them. Whack. Like, that's legitimately crazy. I actually did not know that. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running and allowing us to uncover a deepest secret. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Monstro Lab, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you very much, Monstro, for the support. He said, have a beverage on me too, LSA.
Have a beverage? I shall. A sweet tea. And so with that, thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. If it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so, big thanks once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, huge shout out to Paul Mace, who put in a $3 donation, along with Marc-Andre Brunette, who put in a $2 donation, along with E Oddity, who was not banned in the live chat. They got very worried. They were not banned at all, ever. And they put in a 2. And thank you very much, Paul, Marc-Andre Brunette, and E Oddity for that support. And of course, there was no comments attached, but we appreciate it because it helps keep the channel running. And we also have a $2 support from Paul Anderson, who said, take one from the chat, and I wish I could give more.
And I thank you so much for the support, Paul Anderson. And we are more than happy with the support you gave. You don't ever have to give more. You don't have to give anything, as a matter of fact. We're always just happy to have folks here. And Paul Anderson, considering you've been here for an incredibly long time, we're happy to have you here. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. Let's get that live chat in honor of Paul Anderson.
And that Dean London came in with a zinger. He said, I can't wait for Matt's attempt at being Cheshire. Oh my god, I already did it. It's like
Oh,
it was so
God.
bad. Apparently, it didn't even register on the charts. But anyways, so
Great
moving on here,
heavens.
we're gonna move on from this. Oh, great heavens! Oh dear me! Oh boy, is this your house? But anyways, to get that live chat question in honor of Paul Anderson, it's gonna go to Ted Mitchell, who said, "Has Ukraine received any of their Slinger systems from Australia?"
Not that I've heard of yet. Let me go check. Let's see. Slinger system news. I don't see anything about them being in Ukraine. Heavens. So I'd assume. Let's see. Yes. Let's see here. Yes. So actually it appears that it's a bit of a controversy, because 2 months ago they said that they were going to send them, and then about 8 months ago they said they were shooting them down in Ukraine with the slingers. So I don't really know if they're there or not. I would assume, great heavens, that they are there, but we never will know for sure, and so I will have to say I believe that they are there. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and with that we are on to the next one.
All right, so we are moving on to our next one here. Also, Dean London said, try Essex next. I'm afraid I don't know the Essex accent. I'm not really sure what that would sound like, but Enforcer, do you happen to know?
I happen to know maybe, but I can't really remember it off the top of my head. But I do know that Essex is where Matthew on Top Gear, remember they drove out to Essex and they said, night falls on Essex, and then there's like the sound of gunfire in the distance or something like that. It's like that kind of an area, you know. I don't.
Boy, bruv, are you from Essex? Yeah, you're trying to get knifed up. You're trying to get sliced up, are you?
Nah, that's one of those old Cockney accents, Matthew, from South London.
A Cockney accent. You don't want one of those.
Ain't nothing like a diddy party. Ain't nothing like it's like, it's like, no, get away. Oh, no, woke up in the morning feeling like P. Diddy. It's like, no, you didn't. No, you did not.
Whoa,
Like,
I wonder what that felt like.
it's like, oh, man, you know, you hanging loose, you know what I mean? But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well. But sadly, I don't think I know the Essex accent. You know what? Let me pull this up really quickly. Essex accent. We actually had an aircraft carrier in the U.S. Navy called the USS Essex. So, what is the Essex accent? They'll pronounce words like no as no and drop the t from the words like think. So they say think. Oh, wow, this really is like...
They sound kind of like they could be Southerners. What the Hulk 2 are you doing?
No. Man, they literally say no.
No. Does that come with a warranty? No.
Man, I think. Or something like that.
I done funk yesterday.
My hell, I went up to King's Lane. I asked them, do y'all got any damn quarts of oil up here for a motor? They said, no. And I said, well, I think you do, you bastard, or something like that. But
I think we might be able to pull out the chain tank and try to fix that tire on the side of the street.
Man, I think we need a quart of oil, man. Damn. But let's see here. I gotta find it. I gotta find this now. English language. Oh, wow, there's an entire Wikipedia on this, Matthew. English language in Southern England. So... let's see if we can find any audio clips of anyone speaking in an Essex accent, and there is not one at all. So that is great. Oh, wait a minute. East Anglian feature of yacht dropping was common in Essex. And so let's see here. The fronting, a feature now widespread in England, was found throughout Essex in the 1950s survey of English dialects, which studied speakers born in the late 1800s. Let's see, some examples include bonks, meaning to beat up batter for pudding. That sounds like some
I don't know about that, man. That doesn't sound right.
Oi, Governor, what are we doing today? Why, we're beating batter for pudding. It's like, that sounds like some sort of mafia slang, dude. Like... And hodmadod or hodmadod meaning snail. Several non-standard grammatical features exist, such as irregular plural forms like hausen for houses. Man, there's some housing around here, you know?
They're getting a little German and they're mixing that in with the Essex accent. Well, you're going to put in the housing.
Man, I'm telling you, I don't really know about this accent, but we need to find this now. I'm too curious about this to leave it alone, you see. So, let's see here. How to do an Essex accent in under 2 minutes. Let's just see if he does it at the very beginning.
Hi guys, my name's Matt. I'm from Voice Hacker, and
He does not. This is very unfortunate.
Voice Hacker.
A voice actor. Wait, maybe he was. Maybe he was. Maybe that's what it sounds like. I cannot do Essex then. That would take a hot minute to be able to do right. So with that,
as opposed to a cold minute.
Yes, as opposed to a cold minute. Yeah, that would take a little bit of while because I don't know how to do that, and it takes a little while to learn the mannerisms and the way that people speak, and even then you might not be able to do it properly. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and with that, we are on to the next one. I'm very sorry about that, those sucks too, but with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and the next one here is going to go to Mr. Lunchtime, who puts in $10 of his lunch money, and thank you very much, Mr. Lunchtime, for making that very generous sacrifice of the lunch money, because we know that is a big deal for Mr. Lunchtime, and thank you very much, all jokes aside, for that support. He said, thank you for doing the Lord's work. Take a question from the chat and stay toasty, my friends.
And thank you so much for the support. Matthew put extra emphasis on the toasty. He said, stay toasty. I was like, damn. I was like, all right.
But probably that lag or something.
Man, the way it came through, man, it literally sounded like you did this. Thank you so much and stay toasty. I was like, dang, man. I was like, what is up with that? But beyond that, I thank you so much for the support, Mr. Lunchtime. And thank you for enjoying the channel and enjoying us doing the Lord's work. We love to do it. We're always working very hard here on the channel to be able to make this thing possible. And I thank you so much greatly once again for the support, because if it was not for folks like you who helped to make this channel possible, we would not be able to keep this thing rolling. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we will make sure to take one from the live chat in your honor. And so, with that, what do we got, Matthew? That accent is terrible. I'm not doing it anymore tonight. But get us that live chat, Matthew.
All right, so instead of grabbing a live chat here, I'm actually going to give some breaking news. It looks like, and this isn't too unusual, like this does happen sometimes, but it looks like Russia is currently launching one of the war's largest missile attacks against Ukraine. Apparently, 6 Tu-160 strategic bombers and also 16 Tu-95s and 6 MiG-31K jets are airborne. Let's see here. It looks like there's a lot of firing of different munitions and things like that. Also, Poland has raised all available aircraft, meaning every jet they have, and they've also engaged air defense systems due to the ongoing attack on Ukraine. So let's see here. Hold on just a second here. I'm trying to find out if Poland's actually firing on things as well. Let's see here. Let's see. Blah, 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 blah. So it's not saying if they fired on anything yet, but they have every available aircraft in the air right now. So that is intriguing to find out. Let's see. So yeah, that's all the information I have at the moment. We'll keep an eye on that though, because typically Poland will raise a couple of F-16s, but not their entire fleet apparently, from what we're being told here. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. But that is currently the breaking news.
And with that, I thank you for sharing that breaking news with us and helping us to know what's going on out there in the world. And so with that, we're on to the next one. I lied to y'all. I told y'all I wasn't going to do an accent, and then I came right back and I started doing another one. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here goes to Dean London once again. He puts in a 5 and says, it was an attempt, but let's try London Roadman next. Oi, bruv, now that is the man who shanks him, yeah? He's got, you're trying to get knifed up. Is that what he did? Yes.
I'm ambitious, man. I'm ambitious as crime.
No, I'm just a posh gangster.
Man, I used to go around. I wasn't a real criminal. I just shoot him in the leg with a 12 gauge filled with rock salt. Very polite, very demure, very brat. Something like that. It's like, no, man, that's freaking violent.
You're not the king of the manor anymore. I've got the crown now. I'm the king of the manor.
I'm sitting here, want to be like a British gentleman, yeah? Going around, beating people, breaking their fingers. Very gentlemanlike, very demure, very British. So it's like, no, it's not, man. What the hell are you talking about? You're crazy. You're crazy. And I wouldn't say it to that man's face, though. Because while he might be old, he might have the shotgun around with a rock salt in it. I'm like, no, not the freaking rock salt, man. Don't blow my skin off. But still, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Very demure, very good, very cool. And make sure to get yourself a little bit of sunshine or something along those lines. Bless your soul. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And we are on to the next one. Brother. Oh, great heavens. Oh, great heavens. I think the Discord crashed. Oh, God, that's just petty cash. Oh, my lordy. Oh, great heavens. Oh, it's crashed. Damn it. Oh, great heavens. I don't think that Enforcer Matt is currently here at the moment. Matthew, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Oh, heavens be. Oh my goodness, the lag is hitting this Discord call greater than a pack of bricks, or kind of like that car hit the Edinburgh airport a couple of years ago. Holy moly. Matthew, can you hear me? Bless your soul. You got to be able to hear me. Captain, I don't think we can hold much longer. And so, we're waiting to see what's going to be going on here. Let's see. We're waiting to see. Let me see if I can disconnect and reconnect my Discord. Maybe that'll help us. Oh, great heavens here. Matthew, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Oh, bless our great
I can hear you
souls.
now.
Oh, bless our great souls. Discord's dying. It's dying as...
Oh, dear God, it's going out again.
Oh, God. Oh, Lordy. Oh, great heavens. Pray to the old Messiah. Oh, good Lord. Oh, we're all going to die in a hellfire tonight. The Discord's going in. The nuclear bombers are flying. It's all over. Oh, great heavens. It's like a freaking Netflix stream, the boxing match. Oh, great heavens. Oh, help us all. Oh, JMP's Traveller said, oh, you poor sweet lamb. And I'm telling you, oh my God, my poor sweet lamb. It's petty cash, I tell you. Oh, God. Matthew, are you still there? Oh, heavens.
I'm here now. I'm here, but I don't know for how long.
Oh, great heavens. I don't think you're going to be on the call much longer, Captain. I don't think we have him for much longer. But with that, we're going to try and get a couple of questions out of the live chat. A couple of more. Squeeze it like a lime. Squeeze it dry, old boy. But Matthew, what we got for the next one?
All right, so our next one here goes to Los Cadera, who puts in a 2 and says, no fight for me. Netflix crash harder. I don't know about that one. But Netflix did crash pretty hard. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I thank you for saying that the Netflix did crash. We heard that there was a lot of crashing going on last night on Netflix. Not only was their streaming services crashing, but not only that, their fight was crashing on the stage. It was absolutely terrible. People have said it's a dishonor to this great republic that we live in. And I've got to agree. It was a very great disservice to the boxing industry and the grand republic that we all live in. But nevertheless, I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Eternal Core, who puts in a 2 and says, Enforcer Matt, do a cold reboot on your Apple. And I might try that. Indeed. This is a new computer, though, so it shouldn't have a problem like that already. So I think it is Discord, though. I think we've narrowed it down, but thank you very much for the advice. And also, huge shout out to Aaron Watt, who put in a 1, and thank you very much, Aaron, as well, for that support. And with that, Enforcer, that is our last Super Chat question, so you do the thing.
Holy moly. And also, Matthew, I don't know if you see this in the live chat, but Dragon said, dude, you're going too hard. And you know the only thing that isn't going too hard? The Mike Tyson and Jake Paul fight. Now, people need answers, and I think the answers should be given to the folks. Why was the fight so shit? Actually, sorry, that was the wrong way to say that in the Scottish accent. Why was the fight so shite? People need answers. But nevertheless, Miss Disa said it's Discord for sure. And Discord's always creating a great deal of discord, never helping with people trying to have a nice, good, funny conversation. It's always a terrible, hellish time here on Discord. Absolutely hate it. But nevertheless, we are going to be moving on into the next segment where we talk to all the live chatters. Hopefully we can be able to get around to answering as many live chats as we can. We do have a little bit of time tonight, maybe about 15 minutes or so. But nevertheless, Matthew, take it away.
All right, so tonight we had the Morse code decoders, the entire roster, and it was Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Kevin J, Paul Schultz, David Millsaps, Her Royal Fluffiness, and Arabelle Garbo. They said Morse code says Iran is probably not fired back, simply because they know their nuclear program is over. LLT, LSA.
And oh, my voice crack is terrible.
Whoa.
What the hell is happening to my voice? Forget it. That's the sound of money. You got it dead on the nail. You got the Morse code message absolutely correct. And I've got to congratulate you on getting it correct because you all have been doing this for 997 days. here on this channel, actually around 910 specifically, but nevertheless, y'all been doing it for an incredibly long time, and we always greatly appreciate you making sure to come in here and decipher that Morse code message, because every single time y'all do, y'all hit the jackpot and it's just petty cash, but nevertheless... Thank you so much once again for getting it right. I gotta stop doing the accent. I'm cracking myself up. But with that, we are on into the live chat. So what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Eric Horner, who says, how much of an uprising do you think is needed to have Putin and his minions overthrown?
It would take a severe one. I don't think we've ever even seen one in Russian history like it, except for the Russian Revolution. So it would take quite literally some tectonic event to be able to create something like that and make it happen. And right now we don't see any real resistance like there was to the Tsar currently in the modern Russian Federation. So I don't think it would happen, but it would take some sort of a massive social revolution pretty much attempting to occur to throw Putin out at the moment. And I think that that situation is just impossible to see given the current environment inside of Russia. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next live chat question goes to Andrew Tite, who says, do you think that the snow will help or hinder the Ukrainian freedom fighters?
It will help out the Ukrainians greatly, as they'll be able to drink their coffee made of snow and be able to advance on the Russian positions more fervently. Of course, the Ukrainians are driven by hunger, as there are no more birds in Ukraine because all of those have been eaten, except for these, and these will be eaten on Tuesday. But nevertheless, I would actually believe that the snow is generally going to be hindering the Russians. The Ukrainians will not be conducting offensives, at least in the near future in most areas. It will generally be hindering the Russians and greatly benefiting the Ukrainians, though, in a defensive battle, because the snow makes vehicles a lot more visible. The Russians don't paint their vehicles in winter camouflage. They're still green, so they're very easy to spot across the snow. And not only that, on top of that, the ground also is still a bit of a slush. We've never really seen last year that it turned into a permafrost or any sort of hardened ground during the winter, so it'll still be incredibly difficult for them to be able to conduct an offensive against the Ukrainian positions. And so it'll actually be helping out the Ukrainians on the defensive during the winter. And so I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one is going to go to Eric Solyostik, who says, there has been talk about an Iranian force hitting another tanker on another channel, and you guys haven't heard that, right?
I have not heard that. That may have gone in the periphery, though, because while we do try and cover everything we can and talk about everything that we've seen, sometimes we do miss a couple of things. That may have happened, but we don't have any information here on this channel to prove or deny that. So I'm going to have to give the Glomar Explorer answer. We can't confirm nor deny if that happened. And so with that, I hope that addresses that the best we can, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to support Israel and Ukraine. They said, how many of Putin's purges happen until it finally backfires and some brave Russians take out Putin?
It could happen in a limited amount of times, because Stalin committed purges from the mid-30s all the way up until he died in 1953, and no one stood up to him. Lenin also did kind of the same thing to some degree, and generally it's almost undefinable. It really would just take the right kind of people, and we don't know if the right kind of people are there for that to be stopped at some point. The purges could go on literally until he dies. And to be entirely honest, we don't see anyone made of the right stuff to start a revolt against Putin. So I would say, honestly, the purges will probably go on until he dies at this point, to be entirely honest. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, by the way, I was thinking this because Discord is just tough tonight. Like, it's really tough. The lag is no good and stuff like that. I just pulled up the definition of Discord. So, like, why do they call, like, this platform Discord? Because it's kind of weird because it actually is defined as a disagreement and argument. Hold on, let me see what this is about. There's something popped up on my screen here. Let's see. Don't allow. Okay. The definition of Discord is a disagreement and argument between people. So, I don't know. Like, it's causing a lot of disagreements and arguments here. I tell you what. But anyways, moving on from that, moving on to our next live chat question. This one goes to N. Hansen, who says, how long will it take for the Russian generals to revolt against Putin if for no other reasons to avoid being purged?
I believe that they really won't. It's another very similar question in the last one. I don't think there's any of them that have a spine enough, or they're able to collect themselves enough to be able to do that. So I'll be honest, I think the purges are going to continue well on into the future. If Stalin was anything to work off of, the purges never ended until he died. And I believe that right now, seeing that the Russian government has been a lot more stable than we originally anticipated, I also believe that no one has the spine to be able to stand up to Putin at this point either. And so I hope that addresses that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to JMP Traveler, who says Ukraine says that they will shut off the gas pipeline that run through Ukraine at the end of this year. And the PM of Hungary saying anything?
I don't think the Prime Minister of Hungary has said anything in particular about the pipeline. And oh, look, it's the folks in the orchestra, brother, right here.
Where?
Right here, Budapest scoring, right here.
Oh, look at that! It sure is.
Yeah, this is just for y'all to know. This is literally the camera view that I had when they were doing the orchestration right here. You get in a Zoom call and you literally just sit there and you stare at all of them from the roof like some sort of a prison warden or something. But they were incredibly good, by the way. I want y'all to know that. Like, if y'all ever needed orchestration, for some reason, I would go with these folks. They were incredible, and they were really efficient as well. But that is where they are in the middle of Budapest, crazily enough. They're almost like what I would say, they were almost in downtown. I think they are in downtown, at least from what I can see. But beyond that, though, I haven't heard anything about them complaining at the moment. And also, I think the Ukrainians, everyone generally understood they were going to be shutting down the pipelines that are in their control. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, huge shout out to Palmyra Productions for putting in a $10 donation in the super chat, and thank you very much for that support, and we appreciate that because it helps keep the channel running. And I've never seen that super sticker before. It's a blushing fella right there with the purple hair, very interesting, and thank you very much for that support indeed. Also, by the way, Enforcer, we have one more live chat question remaining, so you might want to do the thing.
Also, before we move on, though, I want to thank Palmyra Productions for the support, and I also want to say, Matthew, that emoji right there, man, it looks like one of those like anime characters, man, who would say something like, "Wow, New York City," you know, like that kind of a thing. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it kind of does, really.
Oh man, dude, there's this guy who did that thing like as a joke. He would go around and talk like an anime character or something, and he went to, I think it was New York City or Los Angeles or something, and he was like in a Jeep with like a loudspeaker, and like this group of people in another car were like cussing this guy out, and he was like, "Wow, Los Angeles, the city where dreams come true." And it was like the funniest thing ever because the other people in the car were wanting to like beat him for some reason for doing it. It was hilarious. But beyond that, though, I do thank you for the support of Palmyra Productions and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, it sounds like we're on to the final question of the night. Crazily enough, we literally got to every single super chat and live chat tonight. A great fortune indeed. And so with that, Matthew, what do we got for the lucky last question of the night?
And that question is going to go to Lucas Kraft, who says, what would happen if a group of partisans for Ukraine took over Moscow, and would it make the war become over?
If a group of partisans took over Moscow, the Russian government would probably crush them because if they're partisans, they don't have a great deal of public support, and they're kind of operating in the shadows as paramilitary units with very low amounts of supplies and equipment in the first place. So the war wouldn't end. It's just that it would be a bloody time in Moscow until they were dealt with, and then the situation would be over. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank each and every single one of y'all for watching. There's still nearly 5,000 people here. It's a miracle, man. It's a freaking miracle. I can't not believe it. 70,000 people have watched this stream from start to finish. And I got to think, oh, then thank you so much to Hotso, who threw in at €12. Thank you for being one of our...
Hey, look at that.
Thank you for being one of our viewers from the European Union. Very cool. But nevertheless, thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And if you have enjoyed tonight, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure to, let us know that you enjoyed it. And thank you to everyone who was watching tonight. The 9.7 thousand people who were here at the peak, and the 5,000 of y'all who are still here, and the 70,000 people who have watched in between. And so with that, thank you all once again for watching. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And the LSA shall never die. And once again, folks, thank you all for watching. And once again tonight, with 70,000 people tuning in by the end of the stream, tremendous viewership once again tonight. And also, thank you all for joining us. And be sure to join us tomorrow, midday, for the short war video. I think it is actually my day, I think it is. So if there is news to cover, you'll be hearing from me midday tomorrow, once again, for another video of news. And also, be sure to join us again tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern for the Sunday night fundraiser stream, where we will once again hit the goal and raise more money to help out the civilians inside of Ukraine. With over 1.4 million raised so far for the Ukrainian charities, we're making good progress, and we will make more progress even tomorrow. So be sure to join us then, and of course, Slava Ukraine, Heroam Slava, get some rest, and good night.
Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Spring on his shore stand.